This is the Patriots Catch-22 podcast with Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar. Hello, everybody.
Nailed it. Joined as always by Alex Barth.
That's a fit. That's a match.
No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
Do you know how many wide receivers are currently projected to go in the first round?
You don't need to name them all.
No, but just, the number to make the point.
We got to move on.
8.
We got to move on. That should just be the show tagline, Marine, is just we've been ranting about this for 45 minutes. We got to move on. All right, we got to move on. Evan Lazar, Alex Barth, Patriots Catch-22. Alex is catching up on a bombshell here from the Herald that just came out from Andrew Callahan and Doug Kyde over there about the Patriots offense and things like that. If you've read it, if you've seen it, we'll talk about it maybe a little bit here if you want to call in and ask about it. I understand that this is going to be a pretty big story here today, but I think some of the things that were written for people that didn't read the article, just really quickly, because this is just top of mind for me right now, Alex.
Yeah.
I think some of the bigger things that came out of this Herald article, and remember, Andrew and Karen Guregian wrote a very similar piece last year, just kind of an autopsy of the Patriots offense and what went wrong with Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, and so this is kind of a similar idea. I think the biggest thing that came out of it is the handling of the offensive coaching staff by Bill Belichick and Bill O'Brien. And one of the biggest points I think that's made in there is that Bill O'Brien wanted to basically clean house on the offensive side of the ball and build his entire own staff on that side,
which is something we talked about at the time.
Yeah, and they didn't do that. They kind of have this combination of old coaches that were holdover coaches like a Troy Brown and a Vinny Cincinnati, one O'Brien hire in Will Lawing, the tight ends coach. Evan Rothstein's kind of in the middle, right? He was a Patricia guy originally and then kind of stayed. So I guess he's technically a holdover coach as well. And then, of course, the hiring of Adrian Clem. And I've been very sensitive about the Adrian Clem situation because his absence has been deemed by the team as health related. And you don't want to touch that. Like, you just don't know what that means, right? It's very vague. Obviously, messing with people's health is, you don't want to come in here and say that it's anything that you don't know.
Look, these guys are all competitors. I'm sure if he could be here, he'd be here. And the fact he's not here tells you it's probably something pretty serious. And you can't, things happen. You can't fault the guy for that.
Right.
But it's the bigger picture thing. And to your point, Callahan writes that Bill wanted to keep going with last year's staff. He didn't want to make any changes. He wanted to keep Matt Patricia. And when you talk about what that looked like, for a guy, and we'll probably talk about it today, Evan, a little bit, and we'll talk about it a lot in the coming weeks, that here we are again, 300, probably 50 days since the last time Andrew Callahan wrote one of these. There needs to be major overhaul. And we spent a lot of time talking last week about, is there a path for Bill to stay if he's willing to be flexible and he's willing to change his approach and change some of his philosophies.
Yeah.
The fact that last year he didn't even think he needed to change his offensive coordinator, I think tells you a lot.
I would push back on that part of the story a little bit. I don't necessarily think that is entirely true, personally. I'm just I'm not trying to attack Andrew or Doug. They do a great job. They do good reporting. I'm just telling you, I don't think that it's entirely true that they thought we're just going to run this back on the offensive side of the ball.
I'm not saying they wouldn't make changes, but do you think it's true that he wanted to give Matt Patricia another shot? Because I do. No,
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I think that it's true that maybe he wanted Matt, didn't necessarily feel like they needed Bill O'Brien, right? And like a completely new start on that side of the ball. But I don't think that they thought that they were coached well on offense last year. No.
Okay. So you think not O'Brien, not Patricia?
I just don't. I can't sit here and tell you that they definitely were going to, like, Bill was cool with basically firing Matt Patricia, and he goes to Philadelphia and it's over, right? Like, I don't know about if they would go that far with it, but I don't think that they looked at the end of,
They clearly thought it wasn't that bad is my point. They clearly thought it wasn't as bad as it was.
I guess I push back on that a little bit.
Okay.
I think they knew it was bad.
Well, I'm saying like Bill. I think other people knew it was that bad.
No, I think Bill knew it was bad too. But I just, the biggest thing to me out of all of this is the handling of the coaching staff and how this all went about. Obviously, they mentioned a lot of things with the personnel as well. But in terms of the coaching staff, for a second, this is something that I've been on for a while. Adrian Clem and that hire.
Yeah.
And how they've handled the offensive line, and then also how they've handled the wide receivers, are two big-time question marks about this coaching staff that I've had for a couple of years now. Their offensive line has been poorly coached since Carmen Bracillo left with Josh McDaniels to Las Vegas, right? They have not been a well-coached offensive line. They continue to be a poorly coached offensive line. Just things like line movement by the defense, stunts, picks, things like that up front. They don't pick them up well. They don't diagnose them well. They don't communicate them well. They don't have good eyes, active eyes, where they're seeing things post-snap. They don't pass it off well. On the interior especially, and we're going to get to 3 up, 3 down in a second, but I had 11 quarterback pressures coming up the middle of the pocket in this game, right? They just don't handle those things well.
Yeah.
And I get that there's young players in there, but those young players, it's a guy like City So, a guy like Antonio Maffi, those guys have been playing a little bit now, right? So over time, you would expect that stuff to get a little bit better, and it hasn't. And receiver, I think we've been on receiver, coaching for receiver since before I even started here. The bottom line is that we all love Troy Brown as a Patriot. He's an all-time great Patriot, red jacket, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure that there's a lot of loyalty from Bill Belichick's side in terms of Troy Brown and because of what he did as a player and all that kind of stuff. And there's no doubt that complicates things when you have a guy that was a really, really good player for you, a really good soldier for you for 20 years, and now he's not doing his job well enough to retain it. But the point is that they have been a poorly coached group at receiver for multiple years now as well. They have not developed many guys, especially guys at the top of the draft. A N'Keal Harry, a Tyquan Thornton. You can sit here and say that those guys just don't have talent and they were never going to be good. And maybe there is some truth to that in terms of the evaluation of the players in the draft. But the bottom line is that they've gotten absolutely nothing out of Tyquan Thornton, who is a guy that does have some skill. He has flaws as a player that we knew, but he's got speed and he's got an ability to stretch the field, and his details have not developed. His ability at the top of the route, his ability to adjust routes on the fly, those types of things have not developed. And then you also just look at spacing and route conversions and technique and all that kind of stuff. It just hasn't been good enough at that position. So I think one of the frustrating things, and we can talk about it, I'm sure we will, if Bill O'Brien deserves blame and Bill O'Brien deserves to retain his job as offensive coordinator moving forward, but it's almost like into some of the things that we've talked about with Mac or with the quarterbacks, you can't expect Bill O'Brien to fix everything when he's saddled with coaches that aren't good at their jobs.
Right. And in turn, players who can't do what needs to be done to turn around.
Right. And so you have, I think this was a big problem that was probably under talked about until right now. So I give the Herald credit for uncovering all of this. Bill O'Brien should have been given more power to hire his own guys on the offensive staff. And some of these guys, like a Troy Brown, there's a rightful reason to think that guy is not doing a good job. This has been a couple years now, and you don't have to fire Troy Brown. You just simply move him back to returners, right? You're now a returners coach or a special teams coach.
Or slot receivers coach.
Yeah, maybe slot receivers coach. Yeah, I mean, he's done okay with a guy like Jacoby.
We saw Jacoby. Pop Douglas looks like a guy. They've done stuff like that before. They've an inside linebackers coach and an outside linebackers coach.
Right.
They don't anymore. They did at one point. That was Steve and Gerard were split.
Yeah, now they're both
along that. Right, now they're both linebackers coaches. Yep. But slot receivers coach, fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. In that regard, something needs to be different.
All right, so it was just we were talking about it before the show started. I know a lot of people probably haven't even read it, so I'll let you guys catch up on that. But I thought those were some of the interesting things to me were just about the handling of the offensive staff and how there was I think we could probably conjecture that there was a divide between O'Brien and Belichick a little bit, that I'm sure O'Brien wanted to hire more of his guys.
Right.
And
well,
Bill
I think
didn't.
You go back to something, I don't remember if we talked about it in the offseason, but I remember talking about it with Felger and Maz about the Patriots needing essentially a head coach of the offense. Not an offensive coordinator, but a head coach of the offense. And the idea was Bill O'Brien was going to be a guy that had the cachet, had the experience to have that kind of autonomy, and he still just didn't get it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I look at this Adrian Clem situation, and now that it's unearthed, I think I can kind of tell you that I've been telling you not to toot my own horn, but I've just been saying to you off the air a little bit, Alex, about James Ferentz's role in all of this type of stuff, and how James Ferentz is basically elevated to assistant offensive line coach. And of course he has his family is all coaches, his dad, his brother, stuff like that, so he's got it in his blood. He's been helping a lot with the offensive line as a player coach essentially all season long. And this Adrian Clem health-related absence, again, I want to be super, super sensitive about what's going on with him health-wise, but I don't think before the health-related absence, I don't think that it was all sunshines and rainbows between Bill O'Brien and Adrian Clem, Matt Groh, according to the Herald, and Adrian Clem. I don't think that was a peachy relationship.
Well, he even said, I found it fascinating. They even say at the end that even though Clem's contract continues, he's not expected to be back. Yeah,
it's that situation went south. There's a lot of tension between Bill O'Brien and Adrian Clem. Let me just put it to you that way. I'm trying not to get myself in trouble here. There's a lot of tension between those two guys.
Yeah.
And I think that there was a lot of that, as the article kind of outlines, as the report from the Herald outlines, a lot of that I think had to do with the fact that Adrian Clem wanted to do things a little bit differently. Trent Brown's quoted in there saying maybe a little bit more new agey, right? A little bit more modern in how they approach it. I don't know exactly what that means in terms of coaching tactics, like he's not going to ride the guys as hard or something like that, or maybe it means in terms of technique. I don't know. But basically what happened is that once Adrian Clem took this leave of absence, they went ahead and went back to Dante Scarnecchia's system. And actually Bill Belichick has been sitting in on offensive line meetings a lot more in the second half of the season since Adrian Clem left. So a lot of that I think has been a big problem with the line. We've seen it with the line, and I think a lot of the things we've talked about are personnel driven. Their handling of the tackle position, which came up again yesterday when Belichick was asked about it. Things like that. But the coaching has been a big issue for them for 2 years now along the offensive line as well.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, replacing Dante Scarnecchia was never going to be easy.
Yeah, they did a good. Carm Bracillo was a good coach.
Well, so they did a good job keeping continuity, but you were never going to keep that forever because you had guys that coached under Scar, but then it's guys who coached under Scar, and it turns into this game of telephone, right? And they kind of talk about in the Herald article that I think part of the idea behind hiring Adrian Clem was this guy played for Dante Scarnecchia. Yeah. He's going to replicate some of that stuff, but the reality is since playing for Dante Scarnecchia 20 years ago, Adrian Clem played for another NFL team, coached for a third NFL team, also coached at 3 colleges. Yeah. So his approach, and I'm sure there were still some core philosophies he got from Scarnecchia within that, but he was not going to be a Dante Scarnecchia clone. He had a lot of other experiences, and other experiences doesn't mean bad things. He had a lot of other experiences that he could bring to the table, and it sounds like they didn't want any of that. They just wanted him to go back to what Dante Scarnecchia was coaching him on when he was a rookie coming here back in 2000.
Yeah, I find this fascinating because it does sound like I didn't read that part of the Herald article. I might have tapped out like a sentence or two too early.
It was at the beginning.
Oh, maybe I just skimmed over that. I was looking for the source. I was looking for the juicy stuff. I was looking for the
you never know. You never know what's going to be juicy.
Chicken and beer stories and stuff like that. But regardless, the fact that they're reporting that Adrian Clem is probably not going to be back next year is not expected to be back.
That part was at the end.
Okay, so the part that I find fascinating about that is that means now the Patriots are going to have their third offensive line coach in 3 years.
Multiple league sources do not expect Clem to return, though his deal extends past this season, as does O'Brien's.
So that part of it I find really interesting because now we get into a position of if it is Bill Belichick back as the head coach, if it is Bill O'Brien back as the offensive coordinator, let's say it's with Gerard Mayo, right, or something like that, who's now hiring the offensive line coach, right? Like, who now, if we're going to have another one, like, how are we getting that position filled and doing it properly? And my question is, and I think maybe this is where you're going with it.
Yeah.
Why not call up Carm Brasillo, right? Like,
well, they already drafted one of his guys from Troy, Jake Andrews.
Carm Brasillo did a really good job with the Patriots under Josh McDaniels in 20 and 21.
They drafted Cole Popovich's guy.
Yeah.
But another guy they could call.
That one. And
I don't know because the way he left.
That
one, that's fair.
That ship is probably
All
sailed.
Right. The other part on Clem, by the way, Clem had played, this is from the Herald here, on the surface it was a sensible reunion. Clem had played and learned under legendary Patriots offensive line coach Dante Scarnecchia from 2000 to 2004. However, his fit in the year 2023 struck some of the organization as questionable. Clem's techniques and philosophy had evolved since his playing days under Scarnecchia, molded by stops at SMU, UCLA, Oregon, and in Pittsburgh with the Steelers.
So this is the bottom line to me is which I find, again, I find this really interesting, is that every single move that Bill Belichick has made on the offensive side of the ball, when he's turned left, when there's a possibility to turn right, left has been into a ditch. Right. And Adrian Clem is right there with it, because the other guy that they interviewed for this position was Ryan Wendell, was a former Patriot, played with the Patriots for years. He's now the offensive line coach for the Rams. He got the job in L.A., and he's been doing a great job with that line and with the Rams. So, Jacoby Myers goes to Vegas instead of Juju Smith-Schuster. Jacoby has a great season for the Raiders, and Juju Smith-Schuster has 200 yards and ends up on injured reserve. Ryan Wendell has a great year coaching the Rams offensive line. Adrian Clem is going to be one and done in New England. But right? I mean, think how many more of these mistakes could we possibly make?
But I think some of the problems would Ryan Wendell, whatever program it is he instituted in L.A., would he have been able to institute that program here? Would he have had the freedom to institute that program here? Or would he have instituted the program that they gave him to institute?
That's fair. He's done a really good job.
No, he has, but it's, again, you read that, it's like the Patriots hired these guys to run their program. They didn't hire these guys to necessarily have them come in and do their own thing. And so when you point, and I'm not saying that, Clem was still a better hire than Wendell or anything like that. I'm just saying, is the problem that they're not hiring the right coaches, or is the problem that they're not giving the coaches they hire the opportunity to coach the way they want to coach? And in reality, it can be some of both. It can totally be some of both. It's not necessarily one entirely or the other, but that's where you go to, again, this ultimate looming decision of, does the change need to be made at a higher level than positional coaches? Yeah,
no, that's a really fair point of, is Bill, I think, especially on offense, because I actually, this was not how I wanted to start the show, obviously, because I didn't know that this was coming out. Is Bill on offense too stuck in his ways of doing it the Charlie Weiss, Josh McDaniels, Bill O'Brien way,
Scarnecchia way,
and obviously with the line Dante Scarnecchia way, maybe the backs are doing the Ivan Fears way, who's always here.
And look, let me just say this: those guys are great coaches. This is not us saying doing it the Dante Scarnecchia is.
The problem is replicating it. It's like asking Mac Jones to be Tom Brady, right?
That's exactly what I was going to say. We've talked about asking Mac Jones to run the Tom Brady offense, Dante Scarnecchia is so great because if everybody could coach the way Dante Scarnecchia coached, Dante Scarnecchia wouldn't be special, right? That's why he's special, because he's one of one. And trying to replicate it, you may be able to get close, but if you have it 99% down, but it's that 1% that was really making the difference, and that's what you can't replicate, what good is it?
Yeah, no, totally agree. With that all being said, if you want to call in and ask us about specifics about the story, we already got one email.
Okay.
As we were talking about this on the show, we got an email asking us if we were going to talk about the report, which is kind of funny. But if you want to call in, 855-PATS-500, webradio@patriots.com is the email address. We're happy to keep talking about that. I know it's going to be a big story here today, but I want to go back to what I originally planned on opening the show with. And I think this does relate, because watching this film back against Buffalo and just thinking about this end of the season and how this is all going to go down the next couple of weeks, one of the things that I don't necessarily know if it's like a pro-Bill argument. I know it's probably going to be taken that way by some people. But one thing that has really been on my mind lately is how much they lose on the defensive side of the ball if Bill Belichick walks out the door. And is it possible, kind of like our Dante Scarnecchia comparison, is it possible for a Gerard Mayo, DeMarcus Covington, Mike Pellegrino, and those guys to continue the Belichick way on defense?
Right.
Because the bottom line is all the issues that we talk about them offensively, the fact that they are outdated on that side of the ball schematically, the fact that they don't have an eye for talent on that side of the football. The opposite is all true on the defensive side of the ball. They have modernized on defense. They have adapted on defense. I would say that Bill Belichick, for all of his warts in terms of all the things we just talked about, which is all on him at the end of the day, Bill Belichick is still one of the best innovators on the defensive side of the ball.
And they wrote about that in
the NFL.
In the Herald thing. They talked about his hands-on coaching. And that's totally a fair point. Like, it's not going to be exactly the same without Bill. But did you catch after the game when Dietrich Wise was asked about the plan for Josh Allen, who did he credit?
Yeah, I asked the question, and this is why I kind of started
you asked
thinking,
that question?
Yeah.
Good job.
This is why I started thinking about it more, is it possible to segue this, right? Like, is it possible to continue this on? Because I look at the way that and I wrote something about this for tomorrow to kind of for people to really visualize it. So a couple of like key points to what I'm publishing. One is that they have now played a lot more dime defense. They're playing a lot more sixth defensive back. They're third in the league in dime defense.
Which
now.
We were screaming for
right?
last 2 years.
And so the way that they're playing that dime defense is because they have the Kyle Duggars, the Jabril Peppers, the Marty Mapus. So all of these guys that we have been clamoring, more speed at the second level, more guys that can play in space and play in coverage, they've done all of that on the defensive side of the ball. So they have adapted. So like for all the people that sit there and say that they employ a Devon Godshaw, Jawan Bentley, Lawrence Guy, those, all what archaic, like 250-pound linebackers, archaic. Well, in reality, when you start to actually break down their tendencies in their personnel groupings, they very rarely are in positions where Jawan Bentley and Jelani Tavai and all their big linebackers and run stuffers are on the field in situations they shouldn't be on the field, right? Like they might play those guys on like 1st and 10 in a nickel package to stop the run, but those guys on 3rd down are not on the field. Like that's when they take Mac Wilson and Josh Uche and in the front, and then they also, they play a lot of dime now in the back end. They play 6th defensive back. And so they've done that. They, right now, are still second in the league in unblocked pressures, right? Unblocked pressure rate, which means that Bill Belichick is still really good at effing with your pass protection.
Right.
Okay, so it's the Patriots, it's the Kansas City Chiefs right now, and Steve Spagnuolo is like one of the best in the game, right? Those two guys nobody is better right now than scheming up pressure. So what does that mean? They're not just doing it by blitzing, like by sending the house. They run a lot of scheme pressures. They run a lot of creeper pressure, particularly, where they're going to drop guys off the line of scrimmage that you would expect to rush, and then they're going to blitz defensive backs, right? So a lot of guys, Kyle Duggar, Miles Bryant, Jabril Peppers, those guys have a lot of pressures this year. And so they do a lot of spin the dial stuff with their front as well as the back end. All that I just described to you, getting lighter on defense, being innovative with how they rush the quarterback. They play a lot of cover zero. They're 3rd highest in the league in cover zero rate.
With these corners, that is something.
And they have, I think what's so cool about their system is they have a bunch of wrinkles to protect those corners within their man coverage calls. So like they play cover zero, but they play man match cover zero now. So if a guy's going to run a crosser down in the middle of the field off of cover zero, they end up actually passing that off in almost like a zone instead of a man-to-man coverage. So they have all these wrinkles and all these different things within their man coverage. So that was another thing when I was doing this deep dive is how is Alex Austin, Sean Wade, Miles Bryant, Jonathan Jones, how are those guys holding up? Like how is that,
right?
Jonathan Jones is a really good cornerback, but the rest of that group has flaws.
Yeah.
And like, how does that group hold up? Well, they hold up because they have so many built-in wrinkles to their typical man schemes, where it's not just like take your guy on an island and you're on your own type of thing, right? They have a lot of different things that they do. So as archaic as they are on offense, and they are archaic, and their eye for talent on offense is why we're in this position at 4-12. In general, they are very modern on the defensive side of the ball. They are very innovative on the defensive side of the ball. They play good defense. They're 9th in the league in DVOA right now on defense, despite major injuries on that side of the ball. And their young players, a Keon White, a Marty Mapu, those guys are starting. Christian Barmore, those guys are starting to get better. Like, those guys are developing on that side of the ball. Those guys are making strides. And lastly, just to tie a bow on it, they're catching up to Josh Allen. Like, they've closed the gap against Josh Allen. And I know that there's
Keon White is literally catching up to Josh Allen, running him down at 6'6", 290 pounds.
I know that Josh Allen missed a lot of throws in this game, and much to your happiness.
Well, he tends to do that. He's Josh Allen.
He missed a lot of throws in this game, but I thought, looking back on it, that he missed a lot of throws for two reasons. One, because the Patriots were making him make throws that isn't really in his bag, right? Second and third, read in the progression from the pocket, sit there and just be pinpoint, right? That's not Josh Allen's game. And secondly, he started this game like 2 for 10 or something like that, and they completely got him out of rhythm because of what they were doing schematically. So I give them a ton of credit on the defensive side of the football, and I still think they coach their butts off on that side of the ball. And you do have to worry, if you let Bill Belichick walk, is that going to continue? So I guess my big takeaway from all of this, or my big take on it, is no matter what they do at head coach, because all the reasons what the Herald outlined, all the reasons we've outlined on this show, it's totally understandable if they move on from Bill Belichick. They have all the justification in the world to do that. They have to maintain their defensive structure. Like, the system on defense is not broken. It's not old. It's not outdated. They need to continue to run that system on defense, whether that's Gerard Mayo running it, whether that's hiring Brian Flores and he comes back and has his own version of it, or whatever the case may be. I want them running the Belichick defense for the next 10 years.
Well, what I would say, and you're not wrong, but you're going to lose something when Bill Belichick leaves, if Bill Belichick leaves, obviously.
Yeah.
But to your point, Bill's been more involved in offensive meetings.
Yeah.
You have players crediting Gerard Mayo for the scheme.
Yep.
How much of it's Bill and how much of it is Gerard? And why would Bill Belichick be so eager to modernize one side of the ball and not the other? And maybe some of that modernization stuff is coming from Gerard, or even Steve or Mike Pellegrino, DeMarcus Covington, as opposed to Bill himself.
Yeah, that's totally fair, because I think DeMarcus Covington has done an excellent job with the defensive line. Like, if there was like an award for assistant coach of the year, I'm giving it to DeMarcus Covington.
But he usually goes to coordinator.
Well, I just mean like for the Patriots staff.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, I'm giving it to DeMarcus Covington. And I also think that Mike Pellegrino is an underrated coach as well, because he takes a guy like Alex Austin, mid-season signing that was out on the on the street on his couch somewhere. He takes him, and now Alex Austin has an interception on Josh Allen in a big game late in the year. I think that there are a lot of really good coaches on that side of the ball. So as much as we can pick on Adrian Clem and Billy Yates and Troy Brown and Ross Douglas, he saw the ship sink in, so he jumped ship to Syracuse, a month ago or whatever that was. I think that the defense, deserves just the flowers. Like, I think they deserve some praise for what they've done on that side of the ball. But I also think that it's important that they continue the continuity and continue what they've quietly built of really good defense. And they have young players on that side of the ball, and they have some guys that are in their primes on that side of the ball, as well as the younger guys that are starting to emerge. And I think that that's a good side of the football. Let's do a 3 up, 3 down. And I know a lot of people are waiting for our draft takes on Penix, and your guy Felger, my goodness, like pants off on Penix yesterday. Jesus. So we'll get to all that in a second, but I want to bring up 3 up, 3 down since we're on the Bills. I guess I'll start. My number one up in this game, I got to find it. There we go. My number one up in this game is Anthony Jennings. Again, I thought he had a great game in this game. 5 stuffs against the run. The Bills came into this game, Alex, really running the ball very well. Like, that was the whole thing with Joe Brady. They changed their approach, and they ran the ball really well the last couple of weeks. James Cook he's a Pro Bowler. He's been on fire this season in general. And the Patriots held them under 4 yards a carry on designed runs, like not taking out the scrambles by Allen, right? Just straight hand the ball off type runs. And the Bills run a really modern, again, to kind of speak to how they've evolved on the defensive side of the ball. The Bills run a lot of option, read option plays, motion. Like, they're not a just like turn around and hand the ball off type of team. They have a running quarterback. They use his legs as a threat. I thought Anthony Jennings on the strong side of the formation, holding up at the point of attack, dealing with those read option plays and setting the edge on that side of the football. I thought that was key to how the Patriots made them one-dimensional. I thought he was excellent in this game.
Yeah, he was really good. I mean, the whole defensive front, my number one up, honestly, was Keon White.
Yeah.
He was, I mean, this is the guy you thought, when they drafted him, and you talked about what kind of player they really getting, an athletic freak with great size who is going to contend with these bigger running quarterbacks. And it didn't show up in the stat sheet, 3 tackles, 1 quarterback hit, but there were plays where he's helping, and it was similar to what we saw them do at times to Jalen Hurts in the opener, where it was don't over pursue him, but just kind of corral him to the sideline, right? And then make him either throw the ball away or try to run it. He's not going to get a big gain or just take the sack. You had 6'6", 290-pound Keon White going step for step with Josh Allen. And there's another play where Allen kind of gets him in the open field and tries to, shoulder shake him, juke him, and Keon White just stays with him. And that kind of balance and that kind of body control from a guy with that size. You saw the raw power show up a little bit too in the run game. Keon White, I think I've had him as an up now 2 or 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
He's played very well since coming back from that concussion, and he's a guy, as you look ahead to next year, I think you can get really excited about, and a guy who should have a bigger role next year.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those players that typical Belichick trajectory of the second half, is this ascension for a rookie.
Right.
The first half is a little bit quiet. He had a big opener, if you remember, against Philly. But then he had the concussion. He had some setbacks.
I think the concussion kind of derailed him because he was playing well up until then. I just think he only missed 1 game technically, but it felt like it took him some time to get back into rhythm. Yeah,
his reactionary athleticism, like his ability to change directions,
unbelievable.
Is really good for a guy that size. I wonder where his most natural position is. I think he's a hand in the dirt end.
Isn't there some value in moving a guy like that around though?
A little bit, but I don't know in this defense, like if they're gonna run like their typical 2-gap odd front defense. He's not big enough or kind of strong enough right now at the point of attack to be like a Christian Barmore, Lawrence guy, like play side end.
No, I think he's more kind of like a Dietrich Wise kind of guy, but more athletic.
That's possible. I wonder where his best position in this defense is. Not that that's like going to make or break his projection moving forward. You
want to put him where he's going to make the biggest impact.
Yeah,
that's a legitimate question. And we talked about it when they drafted him. He's raw, and what does he actually end up doing? He's a little bit of a tweener, and where do they actually end up developing him? Yeah,
because once his block anticipation and sort of his just instincts for the game improve, and maybe like a pass rush plan too, I think would help him a lot. Using his hands better, things like that.
He's only been playing defensive line for like 3 years now, right? He converted from tight end in college, so that stuff's going to come. And you knew that was part of the project when you drafted him. But you're right. Once he becomes a more natural defensive end, he's going to get better exponentially.
Yeah. So I had him as well as Christian Barmore, who I thought on rewatch was more impactful than initially I thought watching.
I mean, teams are just taking him out now.
Well, yeah, he had some double teams in this game for sure. But even still, I had him with a couple quarterback pressures, couple stuffs. Yeah. He was a lot better on rewatch, and I think that his ability to take on double teams now is just so much better than it was a couple years ago or last year. That part of his game is just elevated so much that it's now he's becoming that game wrecker, because if you do double team him, he's not getting blown off the ball by 6 yards.
Right.
He's holding up at the point of attack. He had a great stuff on a double team in this game. So those things for Barmore and White. As you can see, a theme here, all defensive front players so far. So I had those two guys as my next up too, so I'll just skip to the third one. I had Demario Douglas as an up. I thought, looking back on the film, I thought he could have had a much bigger game in this game if the quarterback play was a little bit better. He had the couple catches, right? But the 15-yarder that he had coming over the middle, if the ball doesn't take him to the ground there, if that ball is up a little bit and he can catch it in stride, he has an opportunity to turn upfield and score a touchdown on that play. The ball is low. He's got to go down and get it. And then he also had a couple of opportunities to score later on, or just, to make big plays later on. There was one that they blitzed Zappe, and I don't know if it was a height thing that he couldn't see over the line, but Demario Douglas wide open on a slant over the middle with a ton of space to run. I thought he got interfered with on the fade before the half. Of course, he's not going to get that call yet. Maybe later down the road when he gets a more favorable whistle. So that would have been like a 40 yard DPI penalty on top of that. I thought he was open a ton in this game, and they just couldn't necessarily feed him the rock the way that they wanted to because of the pressure and the quarterback plays. So in general, though, I think what you're seeing with him is just continued progress as a separator. Like, he's a guy that gets open a ton in games. You play man-to-man coverage against him, he's going to get open. I'm really optimistic about him moving forward and put him with a better quarterback, get him maybe somebody else to play alongside him in this passing game, right? Like, if you go into next year and it's him and like Xavier Worthy or him and, one of those other guys, now all of a sudden there's somebody else drawing some attention. Like, if T. Higgins comes here and is the guy on the outside and he's getting, top matchups at the X spot on the outside, now all of a sudden life becomes easier in the middle of the field for Demario Douglas. So the fact that he's put up these stats, I think maybe a little bit, you could say, good stats, bad team, kind of the NBA thing, right? Where it's like somebody's got to score, right? And he's the guy scoring. But I actually think in this case, it almost works against him because now he's a focal point for defenses. The middle of the field's a focal point for defenses, and he's still making plays. And
so I agree with you on everything on Douglas. I actually felt kind of similarly when you talk about, there were more plays to be made maybe in the quarterback play limited. I thought Jalen Reagor got open a couple times in this game. And I thought and obviously he's one half of that third interception, which I think they're probably both at fault, both him and Zappe. There was a lot of finger pointing on that one after the game. I thought, and it's not to say Douglas wasn't enough for me, but it's just funny when you said that. Like, I wrote some of that about, obviously he had the kick return. So he's enough for that. And that was all 11 guys were outstanding. The blocks at the point of attack, Reagor makes a couple guys miss. My favorite player on that play, though, Evan, and I noticed it first on the dots. I would have missed it on the film, but I saw it on the dots. As soon as Reagor gets by Tyler Bass, Pharaoh Brown just takes off for the Patriots sideline celebrating. Like, I've talked about how much I love watching Pharaoh Brown because I know he loves playing football. It was one of those moments where he's like, all right, he's gone, let's go celebrate. Like, I thought that was fun. But I thought Reagor got open a couple times in this game too, and Zappe couldn't get him the ball. And you'll notice a big theme for me as we talk about this game and as we get into the Jets game is, who's proving they deserve to be back next year. I'm not saying bring Reagor back next year to solve all your wide receiver problems. He won't. But to compete for the fifth wide receiver spot and be your kick returner, and like, there's a role for him in camp to compete for a role on the roster, and I think he's showing to be a little bit of a better receiver than maybe we expected. And that's not to say he's great, but if he can give you something and then also be your kick returner, that's a rosterable player.
That's a fifth wide receiver.
Right. And when they signed him, we were talking about, here we go again with, Corey Coleman and all these guys, Laquan Treadwell and all these guys they've brought through the practice squad. He's been more than that. And I know you roll your, great, they have their fifth receiver. The to-do list this offseason is long. The more things you can check off, even if they're lower down on the list, the better, because they need to be able to focus and allocate resources in certain spots. And if you can get Jalen Reagor back on a minimum contract, that's one less thing you have to actually deal with. It's one less draft pick you have to use, or one less guy you have to go to the bidding table for once, free agency actually opens, things like that. Yeah, it's a good point. And I thought that, on the 39-yarder that he caught, it was a really good adjustment on the ball. Like, that's not an adjustment that he's made his entire career. Obviously, he's had issues with drops and ball tracking. We obviously saw that against Washington earlier this year, for example. So the fact that he was able to make that catch over the shoulder, I thought was a pretty good catch as well. And
There was a play late in the game when they were backed up in their own end zone where I thought if Zappe had just thrown with a little bit of anticipation on a little stop route, comeback route along the sideline, Reagor was open again for a nice chunk to get them out of their own end zone and maybe go on a little drive there, a little drive starter, I should say, there on first down. I thought that there was some good moments from Reagor in this game as well. I almost had him as an up, like just for the kickoff return touchdown on its own. That's a good shot.
The catch was really good too. I should mention the catch over the shoulder. One more, and again, it's like a minor thing, and this is more about one play, but it's kind of looking forward. That Alex Austin interception was very impressive, and I know a lot of people, or Bill compared it to the Jalen Reagor pick.
Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah. I'm not saying that, so I'm going to compare it to, the first thought I had when I saw that overhead angle of him turning the hips, I'm not saying it's the same play. I'm not saying it's the same player, but it aesthetically looked the same.
The speed turn was impressive.
Well, so you know the clip from the NFL 100 where Bill's talking about Ed Reed and the pick he makes a payment, it's not the same play, but
no, it's not
for him to, but no, it's not. But my point is the coaching staff was basically like, here's a look, be ready for it. Yeah. And this goes to your point about like how high level the coaching is.
Yeah.
Because he said after the game, we drilled that play all week.
Yeah.
Here's the look, be ready for it. They found a player that could execute the technique against the look. He goes to the middle of the field. Josh Allen bites on it. He cuts back. He has the athleticism to get back over there. Again, he's not Ed Reed, but that's a high level play.
It was a really nice
a high level play by Alex Austin. And
we were pants off when Christian Gonzalez made that play in week 2, so we should be fair and give Alex Austin the credit for making it this week. I'm excited. Excited is too much. I'm intrigued by Alex Austin.
And that's what I would say. So again, to the point I made about Reagor, right? Where all right, at the very least, I've seen from him the last couple weeks. Bring him back in camp next year. Let's get a longer look at him. Let's see. Alex Austin, to me, and he is actually a free agent. He's an ERFA, so they can get him back for no money.
Right.
But we've talked a lot about that third boundary corner, that Jason McCourty role, right? You're going to have Jonathan Jones on one side, Christian Gonzalez on the other. Who's your third rotational guy? I want to see Alex Austin in that competition because I think he's a guy that has a shot at it. And plays like that are why. I think he's showing that he should be back next year competing for that role. I think you have him, maybe Marco Wilson still under contract. You bring in a veteran and maybe a day 3 pick, and that's a really healthy, deep group you have competing for that spot. You should be able to find a guy out of that. But I've seen enough from Alex, and he's had, there's been some growing pains, but there's been enough moments where he's flashed over the last couple of weeks where I look at Alex Austin and I say, yeah, I want to see this guy back here in camp next year. I think there is a role for him on obviously there's a role for him on their 53-man roster right now, but when you have guys back from injury and you're actually building towards something, I still think he's potentially a guy you could keep on a 53-man roster and he can make some plays, and he's shown that with his play over the last couple of weeks. And for people who maybe don't watch it as nitty-gritty as we do away from the ball, I'm glad he had this interception because it allows him to be recognized by some of the people who maybe don't watch as closely.
Yeah, no, look, he has some athleticism. There's no doubt about that. Like, to make that speed turn and flip your hips like that and change directions and then burst, that's not an easy movement to make. And that's like an NFL cornerback movement, right? And then the other thing is that he's got some size and he's got some length, which I think is something they desperately need in that room, right? So we're not talking about not to pick on Miles Bryant or Jonathan Jones or Marcus Jones, but we're not talking about another one of those guys that's undersized, that's really better suited to play in the slot. This is a boundary corner.
He's a real boundary corner, 6'1", 190. He's going to compete with the bigger receivers physically.
Right. And you already compared him to Ed Reed, so I'll just go ahead and continue to pile on here. When you look at guys like this, and you think about how the Patriots find these guys and why they find these guys, his measurables are extremely similar to Stephon Gilmore's, right? And so you start talking about the guys that they like and the body type that they look for. I'm not saying he's Stephon Gilmore, just like you're not saying he's Ed Reed.
Right.
But the body type that they're looking for, 6'1", 190, good speed.
Good length.
That's how they found a guy like Alex Austin, and that's why they paid a guy like Stephon Gilmore a bag, is because he had all those types of length and traits.
Yeah.
So he's an intriguing player, and I'm looking forward to seeing him next year.
I just hope we get to see. And
every week he gets a little bit more comfortable.
Right.
I thought the first, when he had to start for J.C. Jackson, because J.C. Jackson went off the reservation, there was a lot of mental issues in that game, right? There's a lot of coverage busts and just things that you could just tell that he just wasn't. He didn't know what to do on the play.
Right.
Now those things are starting to be less and less, and he's starting to play a little bit faster.
Think this year will ultimately be very helpful for him because of what you just said. Like, he's getting that all out now. He's getting a look. It's essentially like preseason games against starting caliber players. He's seeing what the NFL, because he is a rookie. You got to remember, they didn't sign this guy who's been bouncing around the league. He's been on 3 teams, but this is his rookie year. He's seeing the speed of the NFL game, NFL talent, NFL strength in games that, and this is the point we were hammering back in October, Evan, about playing the kids. And sometimes he sees those things and they're too much for him.
Yeah.
I'd rather him learn that now than learn it next year when hopefully they're chasing a playoff spot.
Okay. To the downs.
To the downs.
To the downs.
To the downs.
I have a bone to pick, and I picked this bone already with some of the guys over at PFF.
Okay.
For telling me.
Oh, you're calling out your boys.
I am. I'm calling out my boys. For telling me that Bailey Zappe had 0 turnover-worthy plays in this game.
They said what?
They said he had 0 turnover-worthy plays in this game. And, see, I didn't expect that kind of reaction. I mean, I knew he'd be mad, but I didn't realize it was going to be that.
Just to be clear, it's not an anti-Zappe thing.
No.
This is my issue with PFF. It's all subjective. And when the guy turns the ball over 3 times... Oh, jeez.
What are you doing?
What
are you doing? He's breaking stuff like unbelievable.
It's fixed. I got it. Sorry. It's good. It's all good. It's all good.
Is it week 18 or?
I was not expecting you to say. They said he had 0 turnover-worthy plays.
For what it's worth,
I didn't even bother to check the number because I figured he turned the ball over 3 times.
Okay.
They would have that down.
So Bailey Zappe is my number 1 down, in case you didn't realize by now. Bailey Zappe is my number 1 down. Let's talk through the interceptions, okay? Because I think that, just as an aside, really quickly, because this is what I do. If we're going to roast Mac Jones for every single mistake that he makes, it's only fair that we do the same thing for Bailey Zappe.
Correct.
Right? So we can't sit here and say that Mac Jones was terrible in this game, that game, this situation, that situation, and then just say, well, Devontae Parker ran a terrible route. Like, no, you can't just do that, right? Like, you have to call a spade a spade. If Mac Jones throws that interception, the same play.
Oh, my God.
It's the same
people
thing.
would have filed charges against him.
Right. So let's just be fair. So the first interception.
Yeah.
It's a quick game concept, right?
Yes.
It's a curl flat. And Zappe is reading the nickel and where that player is going to go. And, well, it's really the will, but regardless, doesn't matter. He's reading that player.
It's a linebacker, right?
Yeah,
He's reading a linebacker.
It was a linebacker type. Yeah, it's like one of their like hybrid players.
Okay.
25. I can't remember his name, but I know his number's 25.
I don't know why I thought it was Bernard.
So he is reading that player. And as soon as that player widens...
Tyrell Dodson.
Yeah, as soon as that player widens into the flat in the zone structure, that should immediately trigger that that he's throwing the curl, right? Because that's opening the passing window to Mike Gesicki. And instead, he hesitates. He holds the ball.
Right.
He's late. He's late to the throw.
And that's why it's picked off. If he throws that quicker, the defense... And look, it's a great play by... It was Ed Oliver, right, who picked it off?
Yes.
It's a great play by Ed Oliver, but you shouldn't have the ball getting knocked up in the air.
Right. So it was explained to me by PFF that the reason why that was not deemed a turnover-worthy play is because Ed Oliver makes an incredible interception. Now, the reason why we got to that chain reaction is
because Zappe threw the ball late.
A separate conversation.
Okay.
But to them, that should just be a normal pass breakup 9 times out of 10. And this one time he got unlucky and Ed Oliver makes like an incredible play to pick the pass off, right? So that's their explanation.
Okay.
But regardless, the reason why the ball was even contested was because Bailey Zappe's late to the throw.
Right.
And he said as much after the game, right? He said, I was late. So that's that. I'm not killing him just to kill him. Second interception is a PPO. It's a pass option, right? So he's got, instead of like a progression read where everybody's an option on the play, he's really just reading one side of the field based off of the numbers, right?
Yeah.
So he's got a screen to Pop Douglas on the right-hand side, and he's got the ISO slant to Devontae Parker on the left-hand side. So if he's got the numbers to the screen, he's going to throw the screen. If he's got one-on-one to the backside, he's going to throw the slant. The problem is that pre-snap, I understand why he made the read. They were 4 over 4 on the right-hand side on the screen. post-snap, they blitzed from that side. So looking at it post-snap, it's awful because they have it 3-on-3 now, and they have it blocked. We're really 4-on-3 if you count pop. So they have it blocked completely into a blitz on a screen. It's like the perfect call.
Right.
But I understand his process is it's a pre-snap read. So you can't just anticipate the blitz is coming necessarily.
But he's had trouble with that. And you're not going to anticipate it every time, but it's become a pattern now where he's getting blind, not literally, but like there's big blitzes coming that he just misses. It happened in the Chiefs game. It happened last week, and
I hear that.
And this is another one
so
where
they had it was Gesicki and Farrell Brown were on that side of the field. They had those two guys to kick out the initial defenders. Then the corner that's playing off the line of scrimmage, it was a really well designed play. They actually had Kevin Harris to lead up through the hole as like a lead blocker. So they would have been 3-on-3 on the defenders, and then Pop would have had the ball with nobody to tackle him. Right. So I'm not going to say he would score because it would be like a 90-yard touchdown, but that's
big game.
It's going to be a big game.
Play.
Yeah, it's going to be a 10+ yard gain for sure. And instead, he throws the ISO slant. He stares down Devontae Parker, and he sees that Rasul Douglas is playing inside leverage on Devontae Parker and is jumping the slant, and he throws the ball anyway. And I'll get to Devontae Parker in a second, right? The route is horrible.
All right, we'll get to that in a second, but continue on Zappe.
But that interception, I don't care if you want to call it like 50-50 or whatever. I know a lot of people are killing Devontae Parker for the route. The decision and the throw and the process by Bailey Zappe also stunk.
So wait, why wasn't it a turnover-worthy play?
That one, they just thought it was a really good play by Rasul Douglas.
Threw it right to him. All right, I guess.
They said it was a really good play by Rasul Douglas and that Devontae Parker ran a terrible route.
Well, look, and on Parker, the slant route particularly.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a play, I couldn't remember the game, and I went back and I tried to find it, and I couldn't find it. But Mac Jones, I don't know if it was the same PPO setup, but where Parker ran a slant, but he ran it kind of lazy, and he broke it off at like, I think, 6 yards instead of 4 yards, and Mac threw it like a 4-yard slant. It wasn't picked, it was dropped. Like dropped by the defender. But how many interceptions this year both quarterbacks have been Devontae Parker either... I almost wonder at this point if they're having him running deep slants, because he's run too many of them deep that...
He prefers to run... I would like more of like a skinny than a true
but
slant.
Like, how do the quarterbacks have the quarterbacks not picked up on that at this point?
Yeah,
because there's been too many times where there's been a throw where it's like, did he just underthrow him, or was the route run like 3 yards too deep?
Yeah, so he runs more of like a glance or like a 5-step slant.
Yeah,
and I think a big reason why is because he's not necessarily quick off the line. So he's trying to get vertical and then break it instead of just, breaking it right on a dime like Pop Douglas could, right? So he's running it a little bit more to set up the fade, and then I'm going to break off. So it's more of like a glance route, which is like a 5-step slant, or a skinny, some people would call it 5-step slant. Either way, it was a bad route, but you still have to put some of the blame for Bailey Zappe, reading the wrong side of the option play.
Missing the blitz, reading the wrong side.
And then be staring down the throw.
Right.
Like, there's still some things that are on Zappe on that. The third interception, I give 75% of it to Jalen Reagor. Like, you have to sight adjust there, and you have to change the route. But it's still one of those throws where you can't just fling it out there.
Right.
Like, you can't just throw it out there on a whim without any real... without seeing that Jalen Reagor is on the same page as
that
you.
was the Mac Jones throw he made, like, if we're going to compare it to the Jones picks, because there's too many times with Mac Jones. This is what ultimately did. I know people are going to say, oh, there's a lot that did him down. He sucks. Yeah. The biggest problem with Mac Jones was he got to a point where he was so preoccupied with the pressure that he would just blindly throw the ball to a spot and expect somebody to be there without checking to see if they were there. And that's exactly what Bailey Zappe did. He saw the blitz, he saw the pressure, and he said, all right, it's just, I got to get rid of this. Yeah, Jalen's supposed to be there, just threw it without looking. And it was Douglas again, right on that one is right there.
Yeah, pick 6. So I had Bailey Zappe with 7- plays in the first half.
How many turnover-worthy plays?
2.5. Like, I don't know. Like, I cut split the baby with the Jalen Reagor one. Like,
What'd you make of the post-game comments from them on that?
it wasn't. I guess technically it was a miscommunication, right? Like if that's what you want to chalk it up to.
Well, Rager seems to put it on Zappe.
What did he say?
So Rager said, I thought I had the exact.
I was
quote
in the
here.
room. I don't remember the exact quote for some reason.
Rager said, keep talking. I'm going to find it. Oh, here. Nope. Yeah, Rager said it was just something between me and Bailey, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Zappe said, we'll get back and fix it, make sure we're both on the same page.
Yeah, so they were on different pages.
I don't know. We'll leave it at that, or I'll leave it at that. Sounds pretty pointed to me.
You think? I think he just doesn't.
When do you say something complimentary and then say, I'll leave it at that?
Okay, I guess that's fair. I don't know.
Or not complimentary, but like there's, I feel like there's a little throwing under the bus connotation.
Yeah, so to be fair to Zappe, because I know everybody, Evan's dragging on Zappe, Max's guy.
I've actually heard you're a huge Bailey Zappe
guy. God, it's all like the fact that some people think I'm a huge Bailey Zappe fan and some people think I'm a Mac Jones guy tells me that I'm right down the middle. Which
no,
is where
I say that all the time.
Right?
Like I feel like I'm correct because both sides hate me.
Yeah, so he had a couple good throws in this game.
Yeah.
Hit Devontae Parker on a crosser that I thought was a good throw. Obviously, the third down play to Gesicki where he extended the play and got out of the pocket was a really good play. The Jalen Reagor deep ball, I didn't count that as a plus, but it was a catchable deep ball.
That's a plus by Jalen Reagor.
Yeah, it was a good.
It's a great catch.
It's a good enough throw.
Good enough throw. Great catch though.
Yeah, and then obviously I thought the scramble touchdown. It's
a nice play.
Nice play. Nice play to get out of the pocket and see that everybody's on one side of the field and run it in. So it wasn't all terrible from Bailey Zappe, but I thought that he summed it up on his own perfectly. So I'm not no reason not to use his words. You can't win football games when the quarterback turns the ball over 3 times. Yeah. Like it's not winning football.
Nope.
And that's where they're at with the quarterback position. I went on this whole thing about the defense at the beginning of the show. They are getting such poor quarterback play at times that they can't win games even when the defense is playing well, right? Like even if they just had a quarterback that was protecting the ball and managing games, they would be in such better shape, and that says a lot about the state of their quarterbacks. Bailey Zappe as a starter now, his QBR is 38. Mac Jones's was about 36.6. So we're really just talking about the same guy here. Maybe they are a little bit different in how they play. Their styles are a little bit different. I think the biggest thing with Bailey Zappe is, though, and this was my concern about it after the Denver game, is that in structure, like throwing on time, in rhythm, with accuracy, that is not a part of his game he does consistently well.
Which is crazy because that's what he was so good at Western Kentucky.
Yeah, so if he can't improve in that area, then they're not going to have sustained offense. So they might have a drive where they hit an explosive to Jalen Reagor, or a drive where they get a short field and they make a couple plays to get in the end zone. But in order to string together 4 or 5 scoring drives in a game, which is what you need to do against the good teams, he's not consistent enough within the structure of the offense to be able to do that. And there's hesitation to his game, that he's late to things. He doesn't see things pre-snap quick enough. And that's why he doesn't play as well in rhythm. And in this matchup, the Bills, they're a zone defense. They play zone like 80% of the time, right? They're a very zone heavy defense. And Mac Jones was able to beat the Bills earlier this year with efficiency. Just get the ball out, dink and dunk, 2.19 second time to release. Mac almost averaged a second more in terms of average time to throw. Bailey Zappe was 3.03 seconds in this game. Average time to throw. Mac was 2.19 in week 7.
Over 3 seconds is too long.
You can't hold the ball for 3 seconds against this Bills defense. The way that they play structurally, the offensive line being in the state that it's in, that I thought invited a lot of the pressure rate in this game. Alex is 58%, which is terrible. But I thought that Bailey Zappe invited a lot of that pressure in this game.
Oh yeah, no,
by holding the ball. So
and that's not just this game. Like he does that.
That's it. He's the biggest of downs. Bailey Zappe. Who do you have in this game?
I had Bailey Zappe number 1. Let me just pull up my list here. I had. Well, I don't think I had him as number 2, but Chad Ryland.
Yeah, that's fair.
I said that whole thing last week about, hey, maybe, he hits this kick and it kind of gets him right mentally and he builds off of that. No.
There's nothing like setting up, running a concept on third down to get yourself into field goal range just to have your kicker miss the kick.
Right.
So they ran, it was 3rd and 10 from around midfield. They ran like a quick game concept to Gesicki to make it a 47-yard field goal to get it inside 50 for Chad Ryland. Misses the kick.
Yeah.
Brutal.
What'd you think of Will Reichert?
Who?
Alabama's kicker.
Oh, I didn't watch.
I know you didn't. I know.
I'm not even going to
just get mad at me for asking.
I'm not even
that.
going to try to have a take. All right. Who else you got?
I got to do it.
What?
Josh Allen.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Okay. Because we both have opinions on this, so I'll get to that in a second.
Do your last one.
My last one was I don't know. It's Antonio Mafi and David Andrews, but I don't know how much of it on David Andrews is because of Antonio Mafi.
So don't you always say that like when you said this to me once when we were talking about, I forgot, some play where like a block was missed and you were like, when in doubt, David Andrews did the right thing.
Yeah, so normally I would think that, but I think there was a lot of plays in this game where I feel like I had to put the pressure on David Andrews. Like I just didn't have a choice. I was like, it's a game, right? It's like a 3-man stun, and David Andrews just gets like bull rushed by the player.
He did get spun around a few times in this game.
I'm just like, I had to put it on him. So between the two of them, however you want to divvy them up is up to you. Between the two of them, they allowed 2 sacks and 11 quarterback pressures between those two players. The rest of the line was actually okay in this game for the most part. Not great, but okay. Vidarian Lowe's been quietly fine at left tackle. I said fine. Don't come at me. I didn't say he was Joe Thomas. I said he was fine. All right, Mike Onwenu was okay in this game until the end. He gave up some pressure on that final drive that they needed him to be better in that big spot, and he wasn't, which I think is disappointing. And then I thought Sidy Sow was probably their best all-around lineman in this game. I think that he's put together some good film. What I wonder in this Week 18 game against the Jets, do the Patriots give Jake Andrews an extended look at left guard over Mafi? Because I thought he was pretty solid in his 13 snaps in this game. He's got just a better technique, like center of gravity. Like he's a lower player. He doesn't play as high as Mafi does. He has a little bit more foot speed to move side to side. And you also just like see the wrestling background. He grapples with guys. He torques guys to the ground. Like he does those types of things that you can see from the wrestler background. So I liked what I saw from Jake Andrews, which I wonder if maybe they give him a little bit more run in this game to see what they have with an extended look on the film. Mafi is... I am going from like, he could be something, to project player, to now I'm concerned whether or not he's an NFL offensive lineman. Okay. His foot speed is a major, major issue. Like unless he loses some weight and gets faster and lighter on his feet, he's not going to start in the league. Maybe he's a backup guard, in the league and makes a name, career for himself that way. But I worry about him in general in terms of what's his future and what's his ceiling. What could we realistically expect from him? Do you have any more downs on there?
No, that's it.
All right. So do you want to talk about Josh Allen? Do you want to go on your victory lap?
He wasn't good in this game. He got sped up early. Yep. He was sailing the ball like 15, 20 yards over receivers' heads.
I agree with that.
Struggled to be a factor in the run game, I thought, outside of the quarterback sneaks on the goal line. I'll give you 2 stat lines. So Josh Allen finished 15 of 30 for 169 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. There's another Josh Allen game where he finished 15 of 30 for 145 yards. Do you know what game that was?
What?
The wind game.
The wind game.
Josh Allen had the same stat line in that game that he did in the wind game. He's now gotten beat by the Patriots twice in a row. They seem to have a plan for him. Other teams seem to have a plan for him. He struggled against the Chargers last week.
Yeah.
He looks banged up. This is every single year with Josh Allen. It's not sustainable. I try to tell you people that there's too much of his game is about taking contact that he can't play at that level for a full season, and it ultimately does him in.
So I don't know if it's necessarily that for me. I am, if I was a Bills fan, I would be a little bit concerned about Josh Allen. Not that the Bills are going to be a winning team with him as their quarterback because he's good enough to do that.
But are they going to win anything?
That piece of it I would be a little bit more concerned about.
You know who Josh Allen is? Joel Embiid without an MVP. Really does some really impressive stuff, but you get into the playoffs and he's banged up because you're asking him to do too much and his game just doesn't translate to the postseason.
It's not a bad comp. What I see with Josh Allen now is regression. Like he's regressed back to being a wild player.
Yeah.
His accuracy, his mechanics aren't tuned up anymore. He's wild with his ball placement and his accuracy. He's wild with his decision making again. This is like I'm trying to think of the years for him. This is like year 3 Josh Allen, I want to say, where you were starting to see some of the like high end stuff, right? But it wasn't the whole package wasn't together yet. Like year 2, year 3.
Yeah.
Year 1, he was a disaster as a rookie because he was a project, right? Year 2, year 3, you're starting to see, okay, this guy has the elements of a franchise quarterback, but he's still trying to put it all together. Now we get to this point, and from like 20 and 21, he's an MVP candidate, right? He's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. Now I feel like he's gone back down to, he has those moments, those flashes, but it's not ever consistent and nothing feels right about his play. He has looked antsy, sped up, whatever you want to call it, in both games, I feel like, against the Patriots. He made more plays the first time around than in this game, I felt like. But in general, I think that he's been flustered against the Patriots this year.
It was never sustainable. It was never going to be sustainable.
I put a lot of it on coaching. I do.
Well, but that's part of it. You've got the good quarterbacks. You lose your offensive coordinator. You keep going.
If I'm the Bills, and if I'm a Patriots fan, I hope the Bills don't do this. But if I'm the Bills, I'm firing Sean McDermott, and I'm hiring Ben Johnson tomorrow.
Let me ask you this. What if Brian Daboll gets let go in New York?
If he wants to come back as their OC?
No, as a head coach.
No, I wouldn't make him the head coach.
Obviously, you bring him back as the OC. I would do anything to get Brian Daboll back in the building with
I
Josh
just
Allen
feel
like
Josh Allen needs... See, Ben Johnson would like put him in the system like he has done with Jared Goff, and he would get him to play under control, and he would get him to play within the framework.
But he's not going to be as that's not Josh Allen. You're asking Josh Allen to not be Josh Allen.
But Brian Daboll was able to like walk the tightrope of allowing him to loosen the reins at times when they needed him to, but their actual base offense was still Josh Allen running in structure.
Can I give you a really weird one who I think would be great with Josh Allen?
Yeah.
Josh McDaniels. And here's why.
Yeah, maybe.
I've talked about this before. There's one big reason, one thing I think McDaniels as well. For all of the mess the 2020 Patriots offense was, the Cam Newton offense, right?
Yeah.
One thing I think they did really well was incorporate Cam Newton running into the offense without making that the entire offense.
Yeah.
And they had a real running game behind it. And they were still maybe like they didn't have the talent to execute some of the concepts, but the concepts all made sense. I've said this before with Josh Allen. I think the one of the big things that I feel like a lot of people don't understand is there's this, if you run him too much, as electric as he is as a runner, and I think that's where he's at his most dangerous, if you run him too much, he takes these hits, he gets banged up, and he can't sustain it. If you have him not run as much and throw too much, he's just not that good of a passer where he can rely on only throwing the ball because he makes too many mistakes. And for 3 or 4 years now, I feel like Bills fans and Josh Allen fans have been kind of expecting somebody to just find this equilibrium. The equilibrium may not exist.
No, the equilibrium, Brian Daboll found it.
I think he got close to it. He didn't find it because they didn't win anything.
Okay, but they scored
here's my
40 points against Kansas City.
I think if...
they were 10 seconds away.
If anybody could find that equilibrium, I think Josh McDaniels is the kind of guy that has his finger on that kind of pulse.
So I think in 21, especially 20 towards the end, and then obviously in 21, Josh Allen... 75% of Josh Allen's, like, just let's call it passing yards, right, were still in structure, in rhythm throws. He was making throws from the pocket.
Yeah.
Then when they needed him to be Superman in the extended playground stuff, he did that, but he picked his spots with it.
Right.
And that was, I think, the difference now. Now he is not making the rhythm throws as consistently as he was, and he's just relying a lot more on the extended play stuff, which is getting him to play like out of control because he thinks he has to do everything on his own.
Well, you know what the other part of the problem is? Stephon Diggs isn't as good anymore.
That could be part of it.
I've said for a while now that he was the best player in that offense. He was the player that was really making that offense go.
I just have to, like, just because, I'm a Josh Allen fan. He does
You're
have
a little more than a fan.
He does have 42 total touchdowns this year. Like, we're talking about him like he's Mac Jones. He does have 42 total touchdowns this year.
But there's a lot of empty scoring in there.
I don't think there is. Like, 42 touchdowns is 42 touchdowns, no matter which way you slice it. He's still near the top of the league in most efficiency metrics. He just is all or nothing. It's peaks and valleys. And Brian Dable was able to put him in a system. I think they ran a lot more RPO on early down with Brian Dable too, where he was making throws from the pocket on first and second down in rhythm. And that was like the basis of their offense. And then third down was where him and Diggs would go to work, right? Like that's when they would allow him to just kind of do what he needed to do to pick up the first downs. Now that's like their whole offense is just Josh Allen being Superman. And he can't sustain that element of it. I'm not sure if it's necessarily as much about the running as it is that he's being asked to do a lot because the scheme is not propping him up enough. And I think that's why if you put him in Brian Johnson's offense or Ben Johnson, McDaniel's not a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Dable coming back, like one of those offensive-minded coaches that can build a structure around him, I think he would be much better off.
But also, just to bring it back to the Patriots, this is why, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but I want to go back to it. It is so dangerous, not dangerous, but like the whole game we were playing where, all right, well, you look in the AFC and there's Josh Allen and there's Patrick Mahomes, there's the Bills and there's the Chiefs and there's the Bengals with Burrow and there's the Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence. Like there's all these great teams. The Patriots are never going to be able to compete again. The NFL, for like 10 years, the NFL does not work like that. It's a year-to-year business, and outside of the Ravens, all of those teams we talked about is, not being viable options fell apart. You can, and meanwhile, you have teams like the Cleveland Browns with Joe Flacco who are kind of a wagon right now. So to try to play that game ahead, and as it relates to this team, people saying, oh, well, the Patriots should go for the long-term rebuild and really draw it out because, they're not going to be able to compete for a while anyway. You draft the right quarterback, you hit on a receiver, you bring this defense back. You got to figure out the offensive line. That's not all easy, but you can do that in a year or two.
Yeah.
Now you're cooking. You don't know who's going to fall off in a year or two. You don't know who's still going to be around, who's not going to be around.
Yeah.
Guys get hurt, guys retire.
Let's call it as it is. As much as I would much rather the Patriots just get really good again.
Yeah.
The Bills falling apart is good for the Patriots.
Oh, yeah.
It's good for them. If Josh Allen...
You don't have to hate to say that.
I hate this. I just mean I wish the Patriots, just beat them.
Oh,
yeah. I wish it was... it's
okay with the Bills being
like
bad.
the Colts, back in the day.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
I just...
You want to beat the best.
Yeah, I just wanted the Patriots. I'd much rather the Patriots be so good that the Bills just can't beat them.
Right.
And the Bills had to fall apart for the Patriots to get back to relevancy.
That's fair.
But the Bills falling apart, and I don't know if they're truly falling apart, but I think Sean McDermott, if I was the Bills, because you're married to Josh Allen. Josh Allen's going to be your quarterback. You're not starting over at quarterback. That's ridiculous. Josh Allen's your guy. So everything that you do as an organization has to be to get the best out of Josh Allen and win with Josh Allen. And
when we said that about Mac Jones, we were being Mac Jones apologists.
Yeah, I just don't know if McDermott it's the right guy for that job.
No, he's not. And it's been clear he's not, but they gave him an extension last year, so he's going to be there for at least one more year.
Maybe. I think that I made this comparison yesterday. He's Mark Jackson, right? He got them this far.
Yeah.
He got them through the developmental stage as being a young quarterback with Josh Allen. Now they need Steve Kerr. They need the guy to put them over the top. If I was a Patriots fan, I would be more afraid of hearing that they fired Sean McDermott than that he's staying.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Because the first two guys they should call are Gerard Mayo, and then if he's not here anymore, Bill Belichick.
Yeah. Well, they should call an offensive coach. They should call.
Bill could figure it out.
They should hire Ben Johnson.
Bill could figure it out with the
Bills. Bill would have Josh Allen running the ball 50 times. It wouldn't make sense.
No, because who would he hire as offense coordinator?
Maybe, but
Josh McDaniels.
I don't know. Bill's
not that far gone. Come on now.
Offensively, Bill would have no idea what to do with Josh Allen.
No, he'd have Josh McDaniels back though.
I guess. I don't know. All right, let's get to the phones and we'll talk. A lot of questions pouring in, Alex, about Penix, your boy.
Yeah.
So let's see if Kendall in North Carolina is still there. I left him on hold for a while. What's up, Kendall? Kendall. Going once. All right. Call us back, Kendall. We'll get you on the air. Chris is in Texas. What's up, Chris?
How's it going, guys? I got a quick question for you guys. Assuming that Williams, May, Daniels, and Marvin Harrison Jr. taken with the first four picks, I'm assuming we get the fifth. We're going to beat the Jets. We always do, honestly. And I think Washington's going to lose, so I'm going to assume we get the fifth. Would you draft Penix with the fifth overall pick, assuming that the medicals check out? or would you draft a tackle or trade down, knowing that Penix will be taken with a 6th overall pick and will be left with no Knicks?
Thanks for the call, Chris. So I guess that's a good segue because I wanted to talk about Penix next.
Yeah.
Do we want to go scenarios first, or do we want to just break down the game and how he played? I don't know which way to take this.
Well, let me say this first about the Jets. And everybody says, oh, the Patriots are going to beat the Jets. They've beat them 15 times in a row.
They're going to beat the Jets.
Let me just throw something out here for you. It would be that streak, by the way, is a major thing for Jets fans. They can't stand that. When
They're beat the Jets.
When Aaron Rodgers signed, one of the first things that Jets fans started talking about was the streak against the Patriots is finally over and all of that. It would be, and I know you think they're going to beat the Jets, but let me just...
I don't think they're just going to beat the Jets.
Okay, but just listen to me. And I they're playing for Bill and all that, but
yeah.
Would it not be the most Jets thing ever to have this streak that they just absolutely cannot wait to get rid of, and they finally end it by beating the Patriots in a meaningless game that actually helps the Patriots get a franchise quarterback? Would that not be the most Jets thing ever?
A little bit. That's fair. So with Penix, to start, I guess with the play itself, because I think scenarios, I appreciate the call, Chris, but we could do this all day long of if the Patriots are picking 5th and these 4 guys are off the board,
right.
What do you do? And we will do that all day long for the next 6 months, I'm sure.
6 months? It's 3.5. 4, yeah.
Whatever it is. With Penix's play, I skimmed through this morning the all-22 of that game against Texas. We both watched it live, but I did want to check it out. I think the things that stand out with Penix, first of all, arm talent is check the box.
There is not a 100%. Better thrower of the football. He is the best thrower of the football in at least the last 3 drafts.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far, but
all right. Well, who do you have? Who's better?
I mean, I'd have to go back and really think about it. But
nobody from the 22 draft is.
That's a lot of praise.
Nobody from the 22 draft is. Kenny Pickett?
Oh, well, yeah, that was
right.
That was a bad draft.
And then
21 had Trevor.
No, I'm saying 20. I'm saying 22 and on. Sorry, 22 and on.
So the last
3. Well, including this one. Yeah.
Okay. I think Caleb Williams is a really good thrower of the football.
This is different.
How's it different?
Penix?
How's it different?
The ball explodes out of his hand, and it's on the receiver's hands every single time.
All right. Here's the Penix take. All right.
I'm not saying best quarterback. I'm saying thrower of the football.
He certainly has. He has the arm talent box checked, and I think the throw. There was 2 throws that really stood out to me on rewatch. PFF had him with 6 big time throws in this game, which is
what is PFF doing?
That's a lot.
It feels low.
No, that's incredibly
okay,
a lot.
But it feels low.
Both
can be true.
6 is got to be the most in a game by a college quarterback this year.
Okay,
still feels low. That's a ton. It's not low. Trust me, it's a lot. The 2 throws that stood out to me, that first post corner route where he just drops it in the bucket.
Is that the one to Polk where he spins back off and runs?
Yeah. That one, the coverage there is a lot tighter than it looks.
Yeah.
Right, and that was just a hell of a throw. And then the other one that really stood out was that bluff screen that they ran, because they ran a bluff screen. They faked the screen, and the receivers release upfield. They ran the bluff screen into the field, from the far hash, right? So they didn't run it into the short side of the field. They ran it into the big side of the field. And the Texas actually covered it pretty well, and he was still able to fit it into a tight window, back shoulder it to the tight end or fullback or whatever you want to call that.
The one
player.
Up the right sideline. Yeah, he's their tight end. Yeah,
and he still fits it in there. That throw is when you start talking about driving the ball down the field, and can this guy zip it down the field? Not deep ball, not putting air under it and dropping it in the bucket, but actually on a line, driving the ball down the field. That's the throw that we're going to highlight over and over again for Michael Penix.
I don't even know that was his best drive throw, honestly. What about the one where he splits the 2 safeties for the touchdown?
No.
You didn't like that one?
It was fine. No, it's a good throw.
Okay.
But
the one to the tight end you like better?
They split the safeties, they miscommunicate. They split. The whole thing's wide open.
That's not a big window.
It's not a big window in terms of the safeties the timing of it, but that's more, in my opinion, that was more of seeing it quickly than actually having steam on the ball. Not that he didn't have steam on it, but that was more about a recognition sort of thing. Both good throws, and there was other good throws. And then the third one that really stood out late in the game to Odunze on the go ball.
Yeah.
Like, it's like third down. It's third in the championship, basically. And he just throws an absolute dot to Odunze, who's got like a guy like draped all over him. So those throws, the arm talent, the ability to move around the pocket is exceptional.
Yeah.
Like, his ability to move around and then throw from different arm angles and off platform. He can generate velo from anything. Like, whether his feet are set, not set, arm angles, whatever. All of that is fantastic. The arm talent's fantastic. The recognition and the processing of the game is at a high level right now. Other than the injuries, because we know that we're going to.
I just add real quick. He even ran around a little bit, which I've been telling people. He's not immobile. He just chooses not to run.
Yeah, they unlocked him a little bit.
Right. Well, and it makes sense. You break it out right there. I think he'll do more of it against Michigan. Like, he's not. I can't hammer that point enough. He's not immobile.
Yeah.
It's a choice. It's not a lack of athletic ability. Anyway, you were saying.
So the injuries are going to be the injuries.
Yeah.
We're going to be saying it till we're blue in the face.
Which is it's part
we'll
of the evaluation.
What all the reporting that comes out at the combine and stuff, and how teams are testing.
Right.
Jim Nagy mentioned that he might be going to the Senior Bowl. If he wins the Natty, I don't know really why he would go to Mobile.
I want him to go.
But
I want him to go.
He might go interview. He might go interview and might get checked out medically by some teams, because that's the biggest question, no doubt about it. The other concern that I would have with him just watching him is just the middle of the field is not great. Like, he doesn't throw the ball with great accuracy consistently to the middle of the field, and the numbers bear that out. And the other thing is, there's a lot of throws on his film where, let's just face it, the receivers are making great plays on the ball. They just are. And it's Mac Jones PTSD.
Yeah.
Because if you look at big time throw rate, Mac Jones in college, 7.5. Michael Penix this year in college, 7.7. It's right there. And what we found out, I think, with Mac is that a lot of those tight window, big time throws were actually just Devontae Smith mossing people, right? And so how much do we count that against him? Not that it's not a conversation with other guys, because it is. I understand that. But at the same time, he is not going to be playing with receivers like Rome Odunze and Polk and Mitchell and those guys that are so much better than their competition in the NFL, because the competition is going to be a lot more even. So I do wonder about that element of it. Again, it's probably just because of Mac Jones, and I've already drafted a quarterback from a loaded offense and it didn't work out. So maybe that's a piece of it. But when you watch it just based off the eye test, he's clearly a more physically talented quarterback than Mac Jones. I'm not making that comparison. I'm just saying
the way the ball explodes out of his hand. I mean, it's different.
Yeah.
Excuse me. A couple things to your last point there. One, and I've said this before, if you don't want to draft a quarterback who's not from a loaded offense, you're either taking Drake May or you're not taking a quarterback. That's just, they're all NIL era. They're all playing with a ton of talent.
They're not all playing. Like, Odunze is going to be a top 10 pick. It's Polk, right? The receiver. He's going to be a top 50 pick.
Maybe.
And then
he's not going to test well.
Mitchell's an underclassman, right?
Yeah, the third guy is Jalen McMillan.
I
Who's
keep
just
saying
like
Mitchell.
a burner. He's just a fast guy.
Yeah.
He'll be a top 100 pick, but
it'll be next year, though.
No, he's this year. They're all this year.
Oh, they're all this year.
If they all come out, McMillan might go back to school.
I think McMillan is going to go back.
Okay. What I would say, so that's part of it. The other part is, I don't think any of them are Devontae Smith, that offense. I think that they're not quite that level of prospect. There's also plays where, like you mentioned the Odunze one, where Odunze not only does he not have to break stride, he doesn't have to move his hands.
Yeah.
Michael Penix puts the ball where his hands are in his natural running motion.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the ball placement, I said this earlier about him when we did this like a couple months ago. There's nobody that throws more perfect passes in this draft than Michael Penix.
So, and that's kind of my point. That's where it's different from Mac Jones. You talk about those big-time throws. How many of those big-time throws were the receiver having to go outside of his frame to catch the football? You don't – Odunze does a little bit of that, but they look – it's like designed back shoulder stuff.
Yeah.
Right? There's – the receivers are making some good catches, but there's not – it's catches through contact. Like Michael Penix is putting the ball where it needs to be.
I guess that's my point, though,
so
right?
here's my third point when you talk about it with Mac Jones.
Yeah.
Ideally, hopefully, you're going to get Michael Penix better talent around him than you got Mac Jones.
Absolutely.
Right? You know
That's
who would be really good with a guy like Michael Penix? T. Higgins.
Yeah.
Right, where he's going to be able to put the ball up where only T. Higgins can high point it, and he's going to go up and high point it and get it. You're not giving Michael Penix, N'Keal Harry, and Juju Schuster, right? So we need to go expand. And I don't mean to pick on you, but like I've seen people say this. Well, how good is Penix going to be when he's thrown to the current Patriots receivers? And it's back to something I said with Mac Jones, right?
It's less a concern about throwing to the current Patriots receivers than it is to be when the competition is level.
Right, but I guess it's more like can we go beyond the idea that this team just won't add plus players, playmakers at the receiver position? Because if you get Michael Penix playmakers, he's going to be able to make plays. If you go out and get him a guy like T. Higgins, if you go out and get him a guy like Xavier Worthy, maybe you draft Jalen Polk or Jalen McMillan in the second round or in the third round.
Yeah.
We need I got red in the face with this with Mac Jones, and just to be fair, I'm going to get red in the face with whichever guy they draft. We need to stop assuming that whatever quarterback they draft is going to permanently be in this horrible situation that he's going to have to elevate. Do you want him to elevate the team? Yes. But you can't just say, this guy won't make it work when everything around him is terrible, so you can't take him. One, no player can do that. Two, you shouldn't be drafting a guy with the expectation that, okay, we're going to draft him, and then we're never going to address offense again, and he has to fix everything. If that's the approach, then somebody else needs to be making the decision, because you can't expect that from any quarterback. Any quarterback. It's not, Tom Brady did it. You're not getting Tom Brady. It's not going to happen.
That's totally fair. I wish that I could be confident in saying that they're going to get that talent around him. I'm not yet, but because I have to wait and see if they actually do it.
Right.
But yeah, sure, that's totally fair. I guess
but it's not even that. It's not even counting on it. Let's say it is the current regime. Let's say they stay and they draft a quarterback, whoever it is. Just because they haven't done it doesn't mean they shouldn't be held to the expectation that you need to develop this quarterback the way it's done properly. You need to go out and get him star receivers. You need to build an offensive line. If that means you don't have, your defensive depth chart loaded down to the third spot, so be it.
Yeah, I feel you. I do. I just think when it comes to the competition thing, the problem that I see with it is more so the fact that how much better is Roma Dunze and Polk and the other guy, I can't, Marshall, whatever his name is.
Jalen McMillan.
McMillan, sure. Than the guy lined up across.
Well, here's the thing. Right?
And how much better is T. Higgins going to be than Sauce Gardner? Or how much better is T. Higgins going to be than Jalen Ramsey, right? These are guys in the division against the Patriots.
Yeah.
That's the question. But in general, I just want to make the point that one more thing. I think a lot of people are also going to sit there and ask, how could you rank Drake May higher than Michael Penix, based off of what we've seen? But that's not what the draft is about, because it's not apples to oranges. Drake May is not playing in Washington's offense. So if you put Drake May in Washington and then Michael Penix in UNC, it's probably going to look similar, right?
No, but so if you go back and watch Penix at Indiana, which that was a terrible program.
I understand.
He has them beating Penn State.
But
he has them beating Michigan.
He's your guy, I know. But just think about
and I have May over Penix.
So
but
my point is that you don't draft based off of college production.
Okay, yes.
Okay, so because Michael Penix has a higher completion percentage and because he threw for more yards and he threw for more touchdowns, his film this year, if you just grade the film on a no curve, right? His film is the best film in the class this year.
Who?
Michael Penix. Yeah. It's the best film in the class. But when you draft players, it's about traits, right? It's about traits. It's about upside. It's about talent.
Right.
It's about fit. It's about all those types of things. And that's why you can still say Michael Penix had the best season.
Yeah.
Maybe I know that Daniels won the Heisman, but I think that Michael Penix, especially if he wins the Natty, is going to have the best season in college football this year for a quarterback.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be the best NFL quarterback.
That's a complicated way of saying, to me, NFL teams look at first-round draft picks like long-term investments, right? Who's the better long-term investment? And I know you hate the age thing, but NFL teams are going to see a healthy 21-year-old or a 24-year-old with two bad knees. And that is Michael Penix, like you said, has been a better quarterback than Drake May, but who has more long-term sustainable upside? There is concern about Michael Penix basically not being sustainable, and there is concern that he's going to get to the league, and even if he's playing very well, gets hurt, and he's not on the field. And everybody knows how I feel about quarterbacks that can't stay on the field. My takes on Jimmy Garoppolo are very well established. That is the big concern with Michael Penix. I think it's a testament to how talented he is, that he has the injury history he has, and he's still considered a first-round pick, because normally I would write that guy off entirely, but he's so good that you basically, and I've said this so much leading up to the playoff, and to your point about, the talent and where's the talent at compared to the guys he's playing, Michigan has an NFL defense. Yeah. Michigan has an NFL secondary. Yep. We are going to learn a lot about Michael Penix next week.
To it. I wish that he played Saban because of the scheme, right?
Naturally,
but it's fine.
But the point being, if he goes out and tears up Michigan,
then it's tough to talk yourself out of it.
I know he has two knee injuries, 2 shoulder injuries. All 4 were season ending. And yes, he'll be 30 years old when he signs his second contract. But at what point is he just so talented that none of it matters? Because if he has, and I do think the age thing is overblown, but this is the way NFL teams look at it. You're looking at an 8 to 10 year window versus hopefully a 12 to 15 year window if both guys max out, right?
Yeah.
And versus May. If May's a 10 to 15 year window, right? And Penix is 8 to 10 if he stays healthy, but you have a better chance to win a Super Bowl in those 8 to 10 years than you do in the 10 to 15 because Penix is showing he's just that good and that ready. That's kind of the argument you're going to have to make for Michael Penix, and that's the argument he's making, I think, when he faces Michigan is, I have 2 bad knees. I have 2 bad shoulders, and I just beat up the best defense in the nation, and I've been doing this for 2 years now, and what more do I need to show you that I'm a Super Bowl quarterback?
The reason why I don't like the age thing is...
You don't like it, but NFL teams are going to care.
I don't think that NFL... The reason why I don't like the age thing is because your argument for the age thing about his window, right? How long is he going to be an NFL quarterback for? I hear that more. The issue that I have with the age thing is that, and this is actually, breakout age has been becoming a popular sort of metric, if you want to call it that, in the fantasy football community. That's like where it really started. And the reason why I hate breakout age is because breakout age basically says the younger you break out in college, the better player you are, right? Because Felger was talking about this yesterday when I was listening to his whole thing about how much pants off about Michael Penix.
He's right, but
when you have a 24-year-old tearing up college football versus a 19-year-old tearing up college football, it's just like in youth sports when you have that kid that was held back 2 grades and he's 14 and everybody else is 12, right? We see it in the Little League World Series all the time where you have this kid that's like 6 feet
Danny
tall
Almonte.
And he's 12 years old and you're like, what the hell, right? That matters. But with Penix, I think the difference is that the reason why he's older is because of the injuries, right? Like if he stays healthy, he was already on. I can tell you, he was already on NFL teams' radars at Indiana.
Yeah, that's the thing.
3 years ago,
he broke out a long time ago, but people didn't know because 1, it was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
2, he was at Indiana. And 3, he didn't play full seasons because he got hurt. In 2020, Evan, he beat Penn State. He didn't have a great game, 19 of 36, 170 yards and a touchdown plus another rushing against Penn State. Against Michigan, Jim Harbaugh, 30 for 50, 342 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Against Ohio State was a wagon that year. Remember, Ohio State went to the college football playoff. I think they played national championship. Now, Indiana lost because it's Indiana. They didn't have a defense. Michael Penix against Ohio State in 2020. So this is, what is he now, 23? In 23. So this is at a 20-year-old, 21-year-old. 27 of 51, 491 yards, 5 touchdowns against Ohio State 3 years ago. He broke out already. He just, at Indiana, he couldn't stay healthy, and he didn't get his chance. If he finished that 2020 season and didn't get hurt, he was going to go to the draft and he was going to be a top 50 pick.
Right. That's why my pushback on breakout age is because you have to, each situation is different, right? You have to put it into context of the situation that the player was in. His situation is very unique. And one of the things that I really like about the fact that he did go through this. Talk about the mental toughness.
Oh, I mean, you know how I feel about him, about his
injuries.
mental makeup.
Yeah.
I think that's his best, one of his best traits.
Last thing here on Penix. My other take on this that I think is kind of goes to Chris's original question. I am still not, and I overdraft is the wrong word. I'm still not drafting Michael Penix higher than the consensus, even if I'm convinced that he's the guy.
What? No.
I'm not doing that.
No.
I'm not doing that.
Somebody's going to.
If I'm the Patriots, this is part of the job. Part of the job is as a GM, part of the job is gathering intel and understanding the board, knowing the board. That's part of the job. Part of the job is knowing what all the other 31 teams are thinking, where guys are going to go, where guys are supposed to fall in the draft. That is part of the gig. And if the rest of the league, it's going to be because of his injuries. It's not going to be because of his film or his talent. If the rest of the league is saying Michael Penix is like a high second rounder because we're not sure about the injuries, drafting him at 5 overall is not good business. It's just not.
That's true at every position except quarterback, I think. Do you know the last time, Evan, a team traded down in the top 10 and still took a quarterback?
Traded down in the...
Because that's what you're saying, essentially. If you're going to take Michael Penix, you're going to trade down and take him.
So what I would rather do...
Yeah.
And the reason why I wouldn't do this is because I'm looking at it and saying, well, is there a way that I can come out of this draft with Joe Alt and Michael Penix? No,
I don't think there is.
I think there is.
I don't think there is.
You
takes is one team. All it takes is one team.
But you can't say that without knowing his medicals.
So here's where I'm at. If he clears his medicals, if he goes to the combine and he gets the green dot thumbs up, right?
That's a different conversation. He's not going to.
Okay. Then
there's going to be there's no way that all 32 teams are going to give you are going to get medical thumbs up.
But it doesn't take 32 teams. That's my point. It doesn't take 32 teams getting the green dot thumbs up.
I personally don't see a way that at this point that he falls out of the teens because
that's what I'm saying.
I think in the teens it's still worth it's already becoming worth the risk.
Here's my point, and I agree with you on that. All it takes is I call it the Cole Strange effect. Yeah. If one team thinks a player is a first round talent, then he's a first round pick.
I hear you, Alex, but they need to. That's part of the job.
Okay,
part of the job
here's
is knowing the intel. Like for example, last year, all of the media, hand up, all of us thought Will Levis was going to be a top 10 pick in this.
I didn't.
Okay, well, the point is that that's where he was projected to go, right?
You were wrong.
Oh my God, really? That's what you're going to do? Like that?
Do you remember how annoyed I got by the Will Levis talk? You compared him to Carson Wentz like it was some kind of compliment?
I'm telling you that that's where the consensus had him. Whether you want to go on your victory lap or not, the consensus had him as a first-round pick. He was sitting there in the green room until the second round. If that happens with Michael Penix, they are so much better off with Joe Alt at 5 and Michael Penix at 35 than they are with reaching on Penix at 5.
Okay, so here's my point. If Penix's medicals look so bad that no team's willing to touch him in the first round, he's off my board. I don't want him.
Oh, I'm not with that.
I
would still like
if you want to take him in like the 4th round, if you want to do the Kirk Cousins thing.
You know what? And I think it was Perillo that made this comparison yesterday. He's Rob Gronkowski at that point, right? And in the second round, that's worth it. That's where the second round is where the first round talents fall into the second round because of red flag issues, whether it's off the field, medical, whatever. That's why Christian Barmore made it to the second round.
At the quarterback position, I just think it's too dangerous to play that game. Because it's not they drafted, they had other tight end plans in addition to Rob Gronkowski. You're not going to have...
Yeah, that other tight end was a great plan.
Okay, well, the
Patriots.com.
Are you going to have that equivalent at quarterback?
Okay. So hear me out. Here's my other thing. I still stick to it.
Yeah.
I'm not overdrafting Michael Penix. I'm not overdrafting him.
I think based on his talent, you can't overdraft him if he's healthy.
I'm not overdrafting him. So with that in mind, move around the freaking board.
So this is where I say it's a very risky game to move down for a quarterback. I asked you that question before. The last time a team moved down from the top 10 and still took a quarterback with like the pick they moved down to in the first round. Do you know how long it's been since the NFL team did that?
Probably a long time.
1995.
Okay, but what's the problem?
And by the way, the Panthers moved from 1 to 5 to take Kerry Collins. Steve McNair went 3rd. It's a dangerous game when you start moving down for quarterbacks because of how hot a commodity they are.
What is to prevent them, though? And this is, I think, in this right now where this organization stands, they need to be thinking super aggressive on the offensive side of the ball. Like, they need to attack this in the offseason. So what's to prevent them from, whether it's trading down and then taking Penix at 8 and then adding another pick, or trading, let's say they have the 36th pick in the second round of the draft. Go up. Go up.
The move is, so here's what I would say prevents them from trading down to 8 and taking Michael Penix. It's the Titans at 7. It's the Giants at 5. It's another team sitting like Atlanta at 9 or Las Vegas at 11 or Minnesota at 12, moving up and jumping them. If you think Michael Penix can win you a Super Bowl, if you believe he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, there's no price worth risking another team jumping you to get him.
Okay,
and I would say that about Jaden Daniels. I would say that about Drake May. There's no price worth it.
Here's my pushback on all this.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we have no freaking idea. So like, to sit here and say, like, my worst nightmare for the Patriots is that they, in a year from now, are the Carolina Panthers, where they drafted a quarterback and they traded up a king's ransom to get him, and he did fix nothing. Right, and they're back in the same position.
This is why I held on, and I'm not saying go back to Mac Jones, but this is why I held on so long, saying you need to know definitively if Mac Jones is the guy or not, because the quarterback carousel is terrifying. It's freaking terrifying. There's 100 different doors you can open, and 99 of them, there's just empty void and nothingness and despair on the other side, and you have no idea. But if you it is their job.
It's very dark.
It is. It is their job to find a guy and believe in a guy. And if you believe in the guy, you have to commit to that. The move to make, Evan, to your point, you cannot move down into. And if it works for them, great. And I'll eat my words.
The move is to move up. The move is not, and I don't mean in the first round.
No. The move is to move up from 34 to the back end of the first round, and that's where you take a tackle or maybe a receiver. Maybe you grab like a guy like Xavier Worthy.
Quarterback.
No, you take the quarterback. No. The quarterbacks that are going to be there. Enjoy J.J. McCarthy then. Enjoy Bo Nix.
Why does it have to be Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy?
Because
you're telling me that all 4 of these guys are going that high.
Top 15, yeah.
I doubt it.
If Penix clears,
it never happens that way.
If Penix clears,
we're going to argue about this for 4 months.
Oh, you can get Mac Jones at 25. You can trade down and get Mac.
They got him at 15. Some people thought he was going to go to the Niners at 3. He already made it all the way to 15.
At this point in the process, Mac, like where we're sitting now in early January,
you think
Mac Jones was a second-round pick.
Okay, but Caleb Williams and Drake May are going top 3, top 5, whatever, right?
Yes.
Like, those guys are probably going to be 1-2.
Jaden Daniels is going to go in the top 5.
Depending on when the draft, the trades and all that stuff. You're telling me that both Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix are going to be off the board by the time the Patriots could trade up from the second round to get one of those guys?
I mean, unless they want to go crazy. Like, you can trade up as high as you want. You can give up whatever you want. But like a realistic trade where you don't blow out all your future assets, yes. I think that I look at...
This is where I start to, like, the tires start to spin on all the ways that Bill would think about this. Because in my mind, I know he might not be here, but the point is that the right thing to do in my mind is to trade down.
Yeah.
Okay. Take the position player you're going to want in this draft. Fashanu, Alt.
You're not trading down and getting Joe Alt.
Not everybody can go in the top 5. Somebody's got to fall, right?
3 quarterbacks, Alt, Harrison. That's your top 5.
Okay, so then Fashanu then. Okay? I want to come out of this draft with a franchise left tackle potential, right? Like no one's a lock to be a franchise anything. Franchise left tackle potential, franchise quarterback potential. And I don't think that either that's totally out of the realm of possibility.
I don't think it is either, but you're okay, so a couple things. There is one way maybe this works, but the draft order has to fall a certain way. If the Cardinals' first pick, remember they have 2, they have the Texans.
Yeah.
If the Cardinals' first pick comes just behind the Patriots, right now the Patriots would be 3, the Cardinals would be 4. Maybe you move from 3 to 4 and you get the Texans pick in addition. and you have to give up some other assets. That's maybe the only way you can do it, but you're moving down one spot.
My point is if you can trade down a little bit, and then you use those assets to move up from 35, like you have to build the package.
Yes,
right?
but here's what I would tell you, Evan. The reason I don't think Michael Penix gets to where they can do that, as the draft order stands right now, Atlanta. So we agree the quarterback teams at the top. Let's say the Patriots aren't. Washington's a quarterback team. You think the Giants are a quarterback team, and then
I don't think the Giants yet. The Giants still owe Daniel Jones for next year.
We had this argument the other way around, but okay. The point being, like,
they're they should be a quarterback team. They don't have a quarterback, but
right now you have 9 to 14 if the draft was today. Atlanta, Chicago's not, but Atlanta, Vegas, Minnesota, New Orleans, Denver. There's a quarterback going somewhere in there, maybe 2.
So the point is that Penix is a top 10 pick on talent. On talent, on film,
and
all that
what
stuff.
I'm telling you is they're going to be...
He has medical... Just let me finish. He has the medical issue, right? Teams get scared off about that kind of stuff all the time. Secondly, Jaden Daniels. I don't know how much the league has evolved yet. I don't know. And I'm not trying to it's not like a racial thing. Don't make it that.
Yeah.
I just don't necessarily know. Lamar Jackson 5 years ago went 32nd overall.
Yeah. And he's going to win MVP this year.
And Jaden Daniels' best pro comp is Lamar Jackson.
And it's a copycat league, and enough teams are. You're making the case for him going high, I think, because I think enough teams are going to look at.
I don't know how much the NFL has evolved.
I think it's a copycat league,
because they're going to look at him as a runner. They're going to say he's a runner first.
So a couple things. One, I think teams are going to look at and say, okay, Lamar Jackson just won the MVP. How do we get our Lamar Jackson? And that is going to fuel things. Second, and this may sound arbitrary, but I promise you it matters. Jaden Daniels' bio, essentially. SEC quarterback, transfer quarterback, played for a former NFL head coach.
Okay.
And then, there's one more. There's one more.
Okay.
Heisman winner. The last Heisman winner in his draft year. So not like Lamar won it as a freshman and got drafted 2 years later.
They're sophomore.
The last Heisman to win it, quarterback to win it in his draft year and not go 1-1 was Marcus Mariota. 10 years ago, he went second. The last Heisman winner to not go 1 or 2 his Heisman year was Troy Smith. That was in 2007.
Okay, but
Robert, you're talking about the league has evolved for the runner. Robert Griffin III went second, Evan. Yeah, that was over a decade ago.
Lamar Jackson 5 years ago goes 32nd overall, right?
Yeah.
2018, 5 years ago goes 32nd overall. Justin Fields went behind Zach Wilson and Trey Lance, 10th overall, because of stereotype bullshit, right? Like he can't read a field, he doesn't have the attitude, like all this crap that they say about these guys, and it's ridiculous.
Well, I think some of it was also Ohio State in the history of quarterbacks there.
Whatever.
Jaden Daniels at LSU, Joe Burrow.
Anybody that watched anything that year in 2021 that thought that Zach Wilson was a better prospect than Justin Fields is an idiot.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Teams get it wrong all the time.
But the point is that just happened like 3 years ago. And maybe Jaden Daniels falls to like 10, like maybe he goes right around the same range that Justin Fields went in. But I'm just not convinced that teams are going to view him as like a top 5 talent in this, like a top 5 pick. I think that there's still going to be some of that, like, can he process it? Can he see it? Can he, is he accurate enough? Like all the bullshit that Justin Fields got.
A lot of teams will view it that way. More teams than not. But that doesn't matter because all it takes is one. And Jaden Daniels' experience, his statistics, again, the Heisman thing, the physical makeup, there's going to be a handful of teams that are very high on Jaden Daniels. And most of the league might look at them like most of the league looked at the Jets with Zach Wilson and say, what the hell are you doing taking this kid second overall? But there is going to be a contingent of teams that looks at Jaden Daniels a top 5 pick, and one of those teams is going to move up to get Jaden Daniels if he starts to fall. The same is going to happen with Michael Penix. I really believe there are going to be a handful of teams that say, this guy's a top 10 talent, we're going to go up and get him. Okay. We don't care about the injury.
I don't necessarily, I hear you, and I think that's a very plausible scenario.
Which is why and maybe it doesn't happen, but are you willing to bet if you think Michael Penix is a Super Bowl winning quarterback?
I don't know that. I can't, like, that's the thing is, like, we always talk about
Okay, but you
this,
don't know
like,
any of these guys. But here's my point.
we can't, like, that was the problem. That's the mistake the Panthers made, right? That you can't, like, that you can't
So
look
the Panthers,
at it that way.
but
you can't
I'm
be
saying,
so convicted and, so confident.
If you're scared off by the fact that a quarterback can be a bust, you're never going to draft a quarterback.
I'm not saying
you
I'm
become
scared
the
off
Denver
that he's going to be a
Broncos.
bust. You just can't invest everything in the pick. Like, it can't, like, you can't.
But I'm saying pick him where you are on the
board.
board. I'm not saying move up. I'm saying pick him where you are on the board. That's not investing everything. That's using your pick.
It's still a top 5 pick in the draft. Like, this is how teams
you have
get
to
into
use
these
that
issues.
pick on somebody.
I realize that, but this is how teams make mistakes. This is how they make the mistake. This is how the Jets get Zach Wilson. This is how the Panthers draft Bryce
So this
Young.
is more about the organization. This is more about the organization correctly identifying it or not. I'm saying if they believe he's the guy,
this is going to be a fun 4 months.
if they're willing to trade down, then they truly don't believe he's the guy. At which point, I don't want him. I'm agreeing with you. I don't want a wishy-washy
the
quarterback.
Patriots didn't really love Christian Gonzalez because they didn't
This all only applies to quarterback. It's a different, and you don't tell me that's a cop out. Quarterback there's 2 drafts. There's the quarterback draft, and there's all the other players, and they happen simultaneously.
You reach on the quarterback, you're gonna be.
You don't, but if you believe in the guy, you already swore a couple times. If you believe in the guy,
those are not swears.
if you believe in the guy,
those aren't swears.
all right, if you believe in the guy, you don't risk losing him. If you don't believe in the guy, you don't reach for him.
I hope that somebody believes in the guy as much as you're making it sound like. Like you can't. I know for a fact, and look, it's gotten them into some trouble.
Yeah,
it's gotten them into some trouble, no doubt about that. But one of the things that Belichick really adheres to is that there's no perfect prospect.
Yes.
So to be so convicted that this is the guy,
but I'm
is a
saying
mistake.
it's relative. But it's relative. I'm not saying you're like, okay, this guy's going to be this guy. We're sure he's going to be an MVP. Blah blah blah. Whatever. But I'm saying to be as sure about him as you can be at a prospect. Evan, if you don't want to play the game about having to bank on your evaluation of a college quarterback, you know what you do to avoid that? You develop the quarterback you drafted 3 years ago. You don't let Tom Brady walk out the door without a backup plan. This was my whole thing I was screaming about for months about you don't want to go back in the quarterback carousel. Because you're right. It is scary. It is scary taking a quarterback in the top 10. Because you ultimately don't know.
I'm not scared about it. I'm not scared about taking the quarterback in the top 10 if the quarterback, if that's like how where he should go. Like Zach Wilson went too high. Like I keep on picking on Zach Wilson, but there's
you can pick on Zach Wilson.
There's a million examples like that.
Okay, the point
the Panthers traded up to the first overall pick to draft Bryce Young.
Think
they drafted the wrong guy.
I just think
the right guy went number 2.
I just think you're crazy to think that Michael Penix shouldn't go in the top 10.
If it's just based off of talent, I'm not saying he shouldn't.
There will be enough teams that don't care about the medicals.
If he has no cartilage in his knee, he's not going in the top 10.
But here's my point. If the medicals are that bad that every team is out on him, then I have no. Then why do you want him?
But that's the thing. It's not every team being out on him. It's just not every team needs a quarterback.
Okay, but here's my point. All it takes is one team. Let's say you trade down from 3 to 6, right?
Know the board.
Let's say you trade down.
Do your homework and know the board.
But you can't know it for sure. You can't. Who had Houston moving up to 3 after picking second?
Nobody, but everybody had Will Anderson going in the top 5.
If you have this plan where you think, all right, we're going to trade back to 8, we're going to take Michael Penix there, and they're going to move back up and get a tackle, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, somebody trades up to 6 and takes Penix. Maybe there's a team you thought needed a quarterback, but you thought they were lower and you didn't think they'd trade up, and then they do. And now what? Your whole offseason shot because the 4th quarterback's on the board, and now you're doing Michael Pratt or Joe Milton. You can't risk that.
Did Jaden Daniels die?
Jaden Daniels, I told you, I think he's a top 5 pick.
Oh, he's not going top 5.
I think he's going top 5.
This league is not taking a running quarterback top 5.
You underrate him as a passer.
I don't underrate him as a passer. They do. I already know they will.
You don't think 1 or 2 teams are going to figure that out?
No, they did. I'm sorry. I am still burned by Lamar Jackson. Okay, because I was a youngin back then, but I knew a little thing, and I knew that guy was going to be freaking awesome in the league.
You were right about Lamar. You were right about Lamar.
It's not even just about taking a victory lap on Lamar. I'm going to just point it as it is right now. The league 5 years ago was racist towards Lamar Jackson. That's what it was. They looked at him and they didn't think that he had the mental acumen to handle playing quarterback in the NFL, and he might win 2 MVPs in the league. Okay? And I am not convinced that the people making the decisions aren't going to think the same thing about Jaden Daniels yet. Maybe they will, and I hope they do, because he definitely is a good thrower. He might be even a better prospect as a passer than Lamar was.
I think he is. I've said that.
But the point is that these teams look at it that way. That's how they view it. And I know it's the same way as how they view the medical side of things too. They get afraid of those things.
Let me ask you this. Anthony Richardson last year went top 5.
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels better prospect than Anthony Richardson.
In some ways. Anthony Richardson is a freaking tank. And he's
more of a
hurt.
I would say he's more of a running quarterback than Jaden Daniels is.
So maybe they have evolved.
That's what I'm and especially in a year where Lamar's going to win MVP. And remember after Josh Allen broke out, everybody, you know why Zach Wilson went second? Because Josh Allen broke out and everybody wanted the next Josh Allen, right? And he was
the next. Nothing like Josh Allen.
Do you remember what his nickname was? Remember, or you know who else broke out? They were trying to get
BYU Baker. He wasn't.
No.
Josh
Do you remember
Allen.
what his nickname was when he came out?
No.
It's not Allen either. Mormon Mahomes.
No.
Everybody was calling him more, and I said Mormon Manziel.
Right.
But here's my point.
Can we take these
it's
phone
yes,
calls
but it's a
that people are
copycat league. I'm not saying
hope
the racial
right.
stuff isn't true, but
I hope you're right.
You're not giving the league enough credit for recognizing what Jaden Daniels can do.
Okay, I don't know. Brendan's in Quincy. What's up, Brendan? Brendan.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Great stuff. You guys kind of touched on what I was going to ask about, but first thing I wanted to ask, really I wanted to talk about Bill O'Brien a little bit. Obviously, we know how the offense is this year. We know where they rank. But wanted to get your thoughts on just, how would you kind of grade his overall performance, first year back as the OC? Obviously, quarterback play has been terrible. Obviously, a lot of turnovers, and we know where the roster is talent-wise. But wanted to see, Evan, I know you're a big fan of his, so wanted to see how you would evaluate him just based off of, how he's, game planning for defenses and things like that. Obviously, we know the talent is where it is, but just wanted to see where they, what you thought of him in that sense. Because I overall, I thought, given the talent is where it is, I kind of liked, some of the design and things like that going on, but curious to see, what you guys think of that. And then secondly, and then forgive me, I wasn't listening before I called in. I know you guys were just getting into the quarterbacks coming out, but, say O'Brien is back and they're kind of running the same system going into next year, which guy coming out do you think would be the best fit for what they're trying to do? Personally, I really like Drake May. Hopefully he's, in the striking distance if, they're sitting at 3. But I know you guys were just talking about Jaden Daniels. Also intrigued with him given the dual threat ability. Obviously O'Brien has history with Deshaun Watson in Houston, similar type of guy, with that dual threat ability. So I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts, and, thanks as always.
No problem. So that's 2 very long-winded, not his fault, but we don't have enough time, I don't think, to unpack all of that. So just really quickly with Bill O'Brien, I really liked the idea of what he was trying to do here. The execution of that idea was obviously not good enough, and now maybe that was twofold. I think it's not all his fault, I guess is a better way to put that. This Herald stuff with the assistant coaching staff, I think, is a big part of it. The personnel is a big part of it. They had a really good install. I think they had a really good idea of what they wanted to do with Alabama-fying the Patriots offense for Mac Jones and adding some elements of Alabama while keeping some of the old stuff. They didn't execute it well. And at the end of the day, that's the coach's job too, right? It's not just about philosophy, big picture, bird's eye view. You have to be able to actually go out there and coach it and teach it and execute it on Sundays, and they weren't able to do that. So we'll unpack the question about the quarterback and like the OC pairings and stuff like that. Let's take this, see if we can sneak in this last call because Aaron's been waiting in Kentucky. What's up, Aaron?
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's up?
Hey.
Don't have a lot of time to get into everything I was wanting to get into, but I was just seeing what you guys would think about this game plan for the offseason. Go out and grab like a T. Higgins, and then first round of the draft, grab a tackle, and then in the second, get like a Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU. I personally don't think that Zappe is the guy, but if we wasn't able to get a quarterback, I could talk myself into an offseason like that.
Okay, Aaron, thanks. Sorry to let you go, but we gotta wrap this. All these off seasons, this is a good way to end it. All these off season
show.
This is the last regular season show. We didn't even talk a second about the game on Sunday.
No, we did. I said that it would be the most Jets thing ever for them to win.
So all these off season
scenarios,
we're gonna map out next week, like our ideal dream plans, and then you guys can all call in and email in and talk about all these different crazy scenarios that we're going to be talking about for the next 4 months. It's going to be a lot of fun. Alex and I will be back next week on we're still probably going to do Thursdays. Time, bear with us, might change here and there, but Thursday next week, and we'll see you then. PU's next.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.